The growth of sports racing in Las Vegas, the growth of it throughout the United States, the fact that it's the fastest growing spectator sport in the country. Las Vegas is the #1 resort destination in the country. This combination, this marriage between us and motorsport racing is a win-win situation for everyone.
ASA drivers will be trying to hit the jackpot as they drive to and through the bright lights of Vegas for the championship race. And driver Gary Santamon talks about the money and sweat it takes to field an ASA car. These stories and more coming up next on the American Racing Times. Welcome to the American Racing Times. I'm Sandy Heng here with Rob Albright. We are at the Michigan International Speedway on a bright sunny day, ready to talk racing.
It is gorgeous. 300 miles coming up in just 30 minutes. The GM Teamwork 300. We can't wait.
But first, the big story. The championship race is going to Las Vegas. We talked to Ross Wallencotter of the Vice President of the Marketing and Convention Bureau about ASA and the natural fit.
Be about 20,000 seats. The economic impact for our city, just with this race alone, will be about $8.8 million. Added to this is the fact that this will be broadcast live on TNN. The sponsorship for this race will be the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, TNN Sports, and the ASA Championship Race Series.
Another story circulating around today is about points leader Butch Miller. It's rumored that Miller has a part-time ride with a NASCAR team. Well, what does this mean to ASA? Rumors are floating around. Butch wanted to put a stop to him. But Butch says Mike Eddy is not off the hook.
Well, you know, I've been really having a great time because I expect the next time I go to a grocery store and I look at those little magazines right on by the checkout there, I expect to see Butch Miller's doing this or that. I just can't wait for it. To set rumors straight, Butch Miller is ASA racing, and with Diane and Ray DeWitt, that's... I don't know what their plans are exactly for next year, but it appears that Timmy Fedewa is going to run the car for the whole year. And right now, we're good friends, and they're giving me a chance to run Winston Cup, which I really like doing, and I'm helping them out by filling in for some of the races that Timmy can't do.
Where's your commitment going to be at?
My commitment is ASA, and especially right this moment, my commitment is we want to win the ASA championship, and nothing's going to stand in the way.
Now, Jay Sauter is another driver that's being talked about around the circuit these days. Sauter has been called, rumor has it, by Richard Childress, the car owner for Dale Earnhardt. What about? Well, quite possibly driving trucks. Well, earlier we talked to Sauter about this, and he says he's committed to ASA.
Well, as for right now, I'm real happy, you know, being with Jerry Gunderman and the All-Star Racing team. They're one of the best teams in ASA. We're just starting to work together. Danny Stillman's the crew chief. He's done a great job with me. And as for right now, we're just looking to finish out a good season and get some wins.
How about next year?
The way ASA has grown just in the last year alone, I think that, you know, we're really content with being here. We want to get a championship. We want to win races consistently first, and then we want to win a championship. Here we're at Michigan International this weekend. We got a big race in Las Vegas this fall. I mean, the series with AC-Delco's help is really growing, and we want to be here to take part in it.
Now, there's a lot of drivers like Jay that are talented and committed, but they want to stay with ASA. They've got a lot going. Things are happening.
Yeah, they absolutely are. Something that is happening that is outstanding news for all of us that are involved with motorsports in nearby Ypsilanti, Michigan. Ernie Irvin continues to recuperate. He's walking, talking. In fact, Sandy, I've been told that he even called Dale Earnhardt and said, forget about me retiring. Well, we've talked a lot about ASA versus NASCAR. Ralph tells us more.
Although Dale Earnhardt's NASCAR Winston Cup Chevy comes from the same good-rent stock car racing family as Mike Eddy's ASA Pontiac, there are some real differences between the two cars. The engine bay is where one of the biggest differences lies. The NASCAR Winston Cup machine comes equipped with a 12-to-1 compression ratioed V8 motor that produces around 700 horsepower. The ASA car has a 9-to-1 V6 pumping out 500 horsepower. One other area of difference is in the weight. The ASA car weighs in at 2,850 pounds with the driver inside. The NASCAR machine, 3,500 pounds. The ASA car also runs with a muffler system and can also compete on pumped gasoline. One other area where the two cars differ is in the suspension. The ASA car runs more of an open wheel style, a coil-over system, whereas the Winston Cup car does not. That allows the ASA teams to have just one car to compete on a variety of racetracks, short tracks, super speedways, and even road courses. The Winston Cup teams have to have a stable full of different cars for the different venues.
Now, those differences will make a different kind of race here at the Michigan International Speedway. How do you see those cars, the ASA cars, handling this track?
I think quite well, Sandy. Most of the drivers have had great success here. Some are here for the first time. A lot of drivers have been here before. I think the real important issue is the drivers themselves. A lot of them have been to road course school at the Bob Bondurant School along with the NASCAR drivers, and the instructors say there's no difference in ability. That's the critical issue.
Well, it is a critical issue. Now, I've noticed there are a lot of drivers. There's a little fear, but there's a lot of confidence out there after practice sessions here at the Michigan International Speedway. I think we're going to see a great race.
Sandy, it's going to be a great one. You know, the veterans qualified up front, but a lot of the very talented drivers, once they get acclimated to this racetrack, will run to the front. It's going to be exciting this afternoon.
And an exciting season yet to come. There were a lot of races, including the race we talked about, the championship race in Las Vegas. Coming up, we'll talk to one of the creators of that great race.
And you know, these 6 drivers have had great success both in ASA and in NASCAR. Which one of them had more success as a NASCAR driver than during his days with ASA? We'll be back to tell you. Though the whole half dozen are certainly among stock car racing's all-time greats, would it surprise you to know that Rusty Wallace has the best winning percentage of those drivers in NASCAR, much better than his winning odds in ASA.
Rusty was one of those great ASA veterans that we just can't forget about.
Rusty, of course, champion back in 1983. We wish he'd come back, run once in a while, but he's still winning races in NASCAR.
Well, ASA has a wonderful and tremendous history over its 28 years. It's continued to grow, and it's growing again, and going to Las Vegas for the championship race. We talked to ASA Vice President Brian Robbins about that step forward into the future.
Well, Brian, about the third point of this season when Group 5 President Dan Duval came to you and said, look, here's what we want you to do. We want you to prepare to run a season-ending race in Las Vegas, Nevada, live in prime time on a Wednesday night, and we want you to build a racetrack. What did you think?
I thought it was crazy, to say the truth. No, it was one of them situations that, I mean, we had discussed this from middle of the year of 93 on. And it was something that it took a lot of convincing that, you know, this could be pulled off, this could be done. You know, erecting a temporary circuit is nothing unusual. It has been done, but to create one such as we're going to utilize at Las Vegas, that hasn't been done. So, you know, it was a situation where, you know, it's a lot of firsts, and I'm just, you know, glad that ASA is going to be a part of it.
Well, Brian, logistically, you don't have a lot of room to work with there, and you have to design a racetrack that's going to fit the ASA style of auto racing. In doing that, what are the things that you consider?
Well, you know, the first handicap that you can overcome is the racetrack is going to be flat. But, you know, we run several events on nearly flat surfaces. I think Milwaukee's 5-6 degrees. You know, Columbus is not much more. So we run on some flat, short racetracks. You know, so that wasn't a real problem. The next problem was, you know, you've got to situate grandstands, you've got to lay out the track, the walls, get a pit road in the thing. So, you know, the whole concept initially was that we were going to try and put a track in there that was so close to a half a mile, as close as we could get. And when you finally got everything to scale, got all the blueprints, you talked to the engineers and everything, the largest track we could put with putting in, you know, the necessities that have to be there for a race or an event to happen, the track ended up being roughly, it will be what most people consider a big 3/8 mile racetrack.
Brian, the obvious question is, why Las Vegas?
Well, you know, Las Vegas is, I guess, internationally known. It's well thought of. It's a place that when people say Las Vegas, everybody's heard of Las Vegas. You know, it's like talking about Monaco or something. I mean, it's an infamous city. I mean, they've done so many firsts, whether it be, I think they're the only site that hosted 3 PGA events in a year, and they've hosted LPGA events, and they have a number of events, a super large rodeo. You know, it's the gambling capital of the world, so to speak. Everybody goes there and spends a lot of money and has a good time, and that's all everybody talks about is the good times they have in Las Vegas. And so when the whole concept about a temporary circuit and all that was bandied about, you know, Houston come up, you know, New Orleans come up. But the place that when Las Vegas was mentioned, everybody said, yeah, that's the place. It's got to be done in Las Vegas. And so that's the reason, I guess, we approached Las Vegas and they were humble enough to, you know, say, yeah, that'll work.
A lot of money is made, a lot of money is lost in Las Vegas. Now, ASA is going to make a lot of money out there. I think a typical race around $250,000, somewhere along those lines, about a $3 million season this season. But it would not be Las Vegas without a roll of the dice or a flip of the cards. There's the opportunity for a whole lot more than just $250,000 this time around.
Exactly, Rob. The people from Las Vegas, the odds makers, and everybody's done a lot of research on what can we do to tie Las Vegas to this race. I mean, just having a race in Las Vegas doesn't, you know, doesn't sing gambling. It doesn't sing, you know, the instant success, the instant big bucks. You know, what can we do? How can we pump this up? And so they come up with the idea of actually every car starting the field will be dealt cards, and those cards will be played against the house. And someone who beats a house, whatever they win is doubled. If they happen to blackjack, it's doubled again. So all of a sudden you take an event that's $300,000 and you double it and you double it again, you know, there very honestly could be $1.2 million on one event. And you know, you could see a winner go out of there with easy $120,000, $130,000 in his pocket, depending on whatever the awards he picks up that weekend. And so, I mean, it's a big race, no doubt.
No wonder we call it the Las Vegas Championship 300. Wednesday night, November 2nd, live prime time on the Nashville Network. You do not want to miss this one.
Those drivers will be hoping to hit the jackpot in Las Vegas, and they've been going through a lot of changes, as Brian talked about, not only venues, but technical and everything else.
A lot of changes, Sandy. I've been the series announcer for the American Speed Association for 8 years. It's always been a very competitive sanctioning body, but I'd have to say the 2 greatest changes, one marketing, one technological, that I've seen have occurred in the last 5 years. First, when Dan Duval brought Group 5 sales and AC-Delco to the party and took the American Speed Association live on national television. The second major the technically related one is when the new car occurred in 1992, and those have been the 2 greatest changes I've seen.
A lot of changes that have happened, and the drivers have been changing along with the series. It means more responsibility. Coming up next, we'll be talking to Gary Santamont about those changes and how he stays focused on racing.
And just before we talk to Gary, only one driver has failed to win from the pole position here at Michigan International Speedway. Who might that be? We'll tell you in just a moment. No ASA racetrack has seen such a high percentage of its winners do so from the pole as MIS. The unfortunate loner, short track legend Dick Trickle.
Now, Dick has a wonderful reputation. I mean, he's a racer from way back.
Yeah, Dick has won more than 1,000 features, they say, in his career, many of them on ASA tracks, but not here at MIS from the pole, at least.
Well, one driver who's been changing along with ASA and who is a young and up-and-coming driver is Gary Santamont. Now, with all of these changes in ASA, it's meant changes for the drivers, more fans, big-time money, big-time sponsors. For Gary, he says he gets it all together with focus.
So, Gary, when you first came to ASA as not much more than a snot-nosed kid back in 1986, some 8 years ago, did you ever envision that the series would grow to its current stature?
Not really, Rob. You know, being, you know, coming from the late 70s, you know, with my dad and Don Gregory, you know, it was pretty much just a weekend thing for them. When I started racing, you know, we were just pretty much the weekend warriors, and when we joined ASA, it kind of continued that. You know, we did move up to the next, it did put you up on the next level, but I never envisioned it'd be the television, the MIS with corporate people in the stands. I mean, it's a big deal now.
Gary, I know when we first went on television 4 years ago, you seemed to be one of the guys that we gravitate to, because you always had this great big smile. Didn't matter whether you could talk or not. You had a nice smile. We knew the people that watched at home said, boy, that's a nice-looking young man. Has it really been a learning process for you to figure out how you relate to the media?
Well, not really, you know. I mean, being around racing all my life, you know, I mean, you know, I always remember something Darrell Waltrip said. He said race car drivers are a dime a dozen. The guys that are going to make it now in this day and age, they're the ones that are going to know how to deal with the media, how to talk to the sponsors, how to talk to the people. And I learned something right there. When I read that in the Speed Sport News, I knew something then.
Yeah, but Gary, you've always been a hands-on kind of a guy. I mean, you're the kind of guy that likes to work on your race car. How have you learned over this 8-year period of time to divide your time, to allocate it between time spent on the race car and time spent with and for your sponsors and your fans?
Well, I'll tell you what, Rob, I really haven't learned that yet. I'm still hands-on the race car. It gets hectic on Sunday afternoons, you know, before the race, you know, having to go and sign autographs. And here I am thinking about what we need to do to the race car to make it faster to get the checkered flag take it home for us.
It's tough, isn't it, going to all those Wins dinners and stuff?
Yeah. No, I'll tell you what, that's the biggest thing that I learned is we are here for the people. Number one, the fans, but then, you know, behind that, you know, we've got the corporate sponsor and Wins. It's a great deal for us. You know, without them, we couldn't be doing it this way.
They turned you into a golfer yet, or tennis player?
As a matter of fact, I have taken up golfing a little bit, and it really, I've started to golf a lot more, but my game hasn't improved.
Well, Gary, there's more to it than just changing out of a driving uniform and into a shirt that says Wins on it. You've got a lot of commitment and a lot of responsibility. How has your life actually changed as a result of all this attention from the media and from the sponsors and what they require of you?
Well, actually, it takes a lot of focus now, you know. After the races, you know, usually, you know, it was about going out and having a good time, and now you have to know that you've got a shirt on that says Wins right on the shirt. So you have to know everything you do. There's a good chance that there's somebody watching you. You know, all that's done is it's really helped me be a better racer, because that key word is focus. And when you're thinking about all these things, all it does is it makes you focus on that race car that much more.
Okay, Gary Cinnamon, of course, is becoming one of the favorite drivers here on the ASA circuit. And when he talks about focus, he also means focus for his family, because this is a family thing for the Cinnamons. Also, talking about favorite drivers, we talked to some of our young racers, and they're a little brand conscious, and they had a question for Jay Sauter today about engines.
This week's question comes from Robert of Muskegon, Michigan. He wants to know, do ASA cars run the same make engines as the make of their car? You know, a Ford and a Ford, or a Chevy and a Chevy, or a Pontiac and a Pontiac. So we asked Jay Sauter of the #1 car.
Well, in answer to your question, Robert, all Chevrolets and Pontiacs, which are General Motors products, will run Chevrolet engines. All Fords will run Ford engines. As far as engine size, our engines are about 274 cubic inch V6s, and they put out about 500 horsepower. We really appreciate you writing in. Thanks, and keep watching the races.
Thanks, Jay. If you have a question, send that in your photograph to Young Racers, P.O. Box 26792, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28221.
Now, Jay Sauter is one of those drivers that learned that balance between the needs of the sponsor and that need to want to work on the race car just moments before the race. Both Jay and Gary work on their cars, drive them, and sign autographs, work with the sponsors.
Absolutely, Sandy. The days are long gone when a driver could succeed and survive in motorsports on talent alone. As other young drivers have found, Brad Loney, one of the newcomers to ASA over the last couple of seasons, has to do all of that for Winnebago and Flex Steel. Glenn Allen Jr., who's recognized as perhaps a future champion in the American Speed Association, he has to push all the right buttons for the people from CarQuest. So they have to not only be good media and marketing-minded folks, they've got to be good mechanics and good race drivers to boot.
Well, another thing that I did briefly touch on is that they always have time for the fans. And any given race day, you'll see them out here signing autographs, meeting and greeting some of those young future drivers that are so important to the circuit and who love racing just as much as they do. Well, we are just moments away from the green flag, and coming up, Brian and Rob will have a live report.
But before we do, we've got another question for you. What is the record number of lead changes in an ASA event here at MIS? Hey, we'll be back real quickly to tell you. Well, the question was, what's the greatest number of lead changes in an ASA race? It was 26 among 8 drivers right here at MIS back in 1985. Did you know that?
I did not, except for having read it, of course, from our research material provided by the Know-It-All brothers. You've heard about those guys. Another thing, Rob, right here at Michigan International Speedway, this is the new frontier for the American Speed Association. They can run on the quarter-mile bull rings. They've proven that. Half-mile high banks, road courses, that's a walk in the park. And I believe that after today, we will have answered the question, can these guys run on a super speedway, with an emphatic yes, and the rest of the world will know it too.
Actually, Brian, I think that question has already been answered this weekend. We've seen only 2 incidents on the racetrack, one during practice, one during qualifying. One of those was mechanically related. We've seen a lot of attitude changes over the course of the weekend. Obviously, these guys are the best short track racers in the world. They needed to prove to themselves that they could also go 180 miles an hour, and they've done that.
Well, some of them have come here, obviously, with a little bit of trepidation, and they've run alone in practice and qualifying, and late in practice, of course, yesterday. They were able to run in traffic just a little bit to feel what it was like to do some drafting, and even the rookie drivers are out here going, hey, we're race car drivers. This is going to be fun. We're enjoying it, and, of course, Rob, you and I are looking forward to it.
Absolutely, and so is this huge throng. I'm surprised, Brian. There was very little public publicity done for this race. It was pretty much a private party for gym employees and their suppliers and their retailers. And I'm amazed. I guess an hour and a half before race time, about 35,000 people were already in the grandstand.
And they keep opening new sections of grandstand here and spreading out into the turns. And every time they open a new section, it fills up in just a matter of minutes. People are still rolling in here. And yes, a surprise, yes, but a pleasant one. You got to say that.
And I'll tell you, as the drivers' introductions were held, it was kind of fun listening to the combination of yays and cheers and boos that each of the drivers got from their various respective fans and detractors. But, you know, they're ready to go to a show, and it's going to be fantastic today.
Thanks, Brian and Rob. I'm Sandy Heng. Thank you for joining us for another edition of the American Racing Times. We are just moments away from the green flag here at Michigan International Speedway. 300 miles of excitement. But don't forget the upcoming championship race, November 2nd in Las Vegas. Another 300 laps of fun. For the American Racing Times, I'm Sandy Heng.
The following is a special presentation on TNN, the Nashville Network.
We've raced on quarter-mile Midwest bull rings and half-mile high banks anywhere you can find them. Road courses, turning left, turning right, no problem. But can the stars of ASA handle the super speedways at 170 miles an hour plus? You bet.
High speed, high banks, this is going to be awesome.
Well, it's just the speed here and how it affects the cars, just tremendous.
Racing at MIS has got my heart right on the rev limiter.
It's exhilarating and it's exciting.
2 miles around, no problem. That just means these guys get to keep a foot in the floor that much longer.
MIS is cool.
We've been looking forward to coming here all season long, and finally, Michigan International Speedway in Brooklyn, Michigan hosts this day's stop on the ASA AC-Delco Challenge Series Tour for 1994, and Mother Nature has smiled upon us in a very, very big way. Beautiful, bright, clear, sunny skies. It is a perfect day for spectators and for racing conditions alike. All season long, we have seen Butch Miller on top of the point standings, but Mike Eddy is chasing him hard, looking for an unprecedented 8th championship. The only guy that could do that in a major motorsports tour. Bob Seneker has moved up into 4th place with his victory last week, and of course Steve Holtzhausen with his incredible 400-lap run sits in 3rd spot. Hello again, everybody. I'm Brian Drever, along with my good friend Rob Albright. We're standing high atop Michigan International Speedway, looking forward to another terrific race here. And one thing we mentioned about the weather, for the first time since Denver probably, practice, qualifying, and the race are all going to be held under the same conditions, and it's going to be hot.
It certainly is going to be hot. The excitement, though, is going to be right up there in the front row. I missed you last weekend for that non-televised race at Minnesota State Fair in front of a packed house. But the guy that was on the pole last weekend is also on the pole this weekend, Bob Seneker in that Johnsonville Foods Lane Automotive Ford Thunderbird. And the real story here, Brian, is that where all of these cars are identical, at least in terms of the center section of the chassis, they then are farmed out to one of the major respective chassis builders, either Hal Racing Enterprises or Port City Racing or one of another of a handful of organizations that build the cars, but not these two guys up front. Bob Seneker built his own 2 years ago. He kind of pioneered some ideas, and they've proven to be very, very good for Bob and also for the guy that sits to his flank.
Well, you know, Mike Miller was fast right out of the trailer last week in Minnesota. Then he had a brake problem. He was racing his way to the front. This time he is qualified on the front row, and he, too, is another one of those home-built chassis guys, likes to do things his own way. I visited his shop back in the cold of winter down in Marietta, Georgia. His chassis was little tubes laying all over the race shop. A lot of guys looked at him with some skepticism when he brought his race car out at the first race of the season, but he's down there with a very, very fast automobile sitting right alongside the Bluebird.
Yeah, Mike Miller needs some good luck this weekend. He's always been fast, but he needs to last today to win.
Well, down on pit road, we're going to have two guys working with us again this week. Makes it twice as much fun as usual. First, we're going to report in down to our usual comrade on pit road. Ralph Shaheen is up front.
Brian, we know that the Bluebird is blazingly quick. It qualified at over 171 miles an hour. It tipped 173 plus in practice. The one thing we don't know about these ASA cars is how will they survive here at MIS under the rigors of running a super speedway. Now, Bob, you built this one yourself. What are you concerned about as far as stressed areas on this car when we go 300 miles at MIS?
Well, these cars are, they're tough enough. I'm not worried about any mechanical failure in the chassis department. It's just whether these V6 engines can take this kind of a beating. We think they can. We hope they can. We're going to find out.
Now, the 9-to-1 compression ratio should help that with these V6. And one other person who built his from the ground up, in fact, it's brand spanking new, and its first laps in competition will be today with Mike Eddy's brand new Pontiac, the GM Goodwrench entry. Chad Myers?
Yes, we're back down here, way back, row 15. You don't expect to see Kenny Schrader back in row 15, but because he was racing until 12:30 in the morning last night, not a chance to qualify. Kenny, we saw you on racing last night. It was way into the morning before you got out of Richmond. Do you ever say to yourself, man, I really get tired of this?
I get tired sometimes. I don't get tired of this. We're ready to go tonight. This is only 150 laps.
Well, we know it's 150 laps, but you really, really have the experience here compared to, let's say, the short track guys up ahead of you. They haven't qualified as fast as you have, but you didn't get any time in this car. How is your experience, but yet lack of time in this car, going to affect you today?
Well, I don't think our experience will hurt us none as far as getting maybe up there to, 8th, 9th, 10th, something like that. But then from there on, I sure would like to have some time in the car.
Well, Ken Schrader is ready, and I know so is Ralph Shaheen.
Well, as we said earlier, Chad, this is kind of a big party for the General Motors folks here tonight. We've got some 35,000+ people up here in our grandstands. And when TNN throws a corporate party, they like to bring in like Reba McEntire. Well, when General Motors likes to throw a party, they bring in their #1 racing team, the ASA. And to help get us started here this afternoon, Mr. Bill Lovejoy, who is the Vice President and General Manager of GMSPO.
Thank you very much. We'd like to welcome all of our customers, our distribution partners, and our 5,000 General Motors employees to this Record ASA race at Michigan Speedway.
And the guy who is going to fire up the engines, Mr. Jim LaRue, the General Manager of Network Sales. Gentlemen, start your engines.
The GM Teamwork 300. The engines are fired up. All that's left is to drop the green flag and see who's going to win it. We'll be right back. The AC-Delco Challenge Series on TNN is brought to you in part by Win Oil Company, makers of quality automotive car care products. Remember, when it wins, it works.
By Mr. Goodwrench, the GM expert at participating GM dealerships.
And by Super America. At Super America, we never stop. And by Las Vegas, home of the Las Vegas 300, the ASA Championship Race. Hello again and welcome everybody to Michigan International Speedway, where we are in the parade lap, you might say, behind the pace car, getting ready to go green here. And we are going to have a terrific race. 36 cars have taken the field, and we're going to take a look at the grid right now.
For the third successive race, he'll go from the pole in the Johnsonville Foods Lane Automotive Ford Thunderbird, the Bluebird, Bob Seneker. And with his best qualifying performance of the season, Mike Miller starts second in the Funco Land Pontiac Motorsports Grand Prix.
Experience and treachery alongside youth and enthusiasm. 7-time champion, the Polar Bear, Mike Eddy in the GM Goodrich Pontiac, alongside rookie Brian Refner in the Structural Transport T-Bird. Fourth, the best rookie qualifying this year.
Scott Hansen doing quite well, thank you, with his own team, the AFCO Hansen Motorsports Ford Thunderbird, and the surprise of qualifying, the youngster from California, Brett Bell, in the Wonder Bar Besco Ford will start sixth.
The points leader, Butch Miller, changed an engine just before qualifying, but still pedaled the Quality Care Thunderbird onto the fourth row next to Glenn Allen Jr. in the CarQuest Auto Parts Grand Prix. Little Glenn hopes his engine troubles are behind him.
He's had mixed fortune since joining the Wisconsin Aviation Delta Faucets team, but Jay Sauter will start ninth, and outside of row number 5 is Harold Fair in the Build-A-Mold Triplast 2000 Pontiac.
On the 6th row, Steve Holtzhausen, of course, who had that great 400 out of 400 laps led when he won a race a couple of weeks ago. Joe Knott, the 48 car, youngest driver on ASA, and the rest of the field, as we start to look back, there's going to be a few guys that are going to have to fight their way up through the field if they're going to get to the front.
Including Dave Sensiva, who had an engine problem. We've talked about this ongoing battle. There he is starting on the outside of row number 9. Now, Refner's qualifying effort outside of the second row here, Brian, equaled Sensiva's 4th place start at Berlin, but that's a place where he's been a champion before.
Well, we started a list with these two rookie drivers at the beginning of the season, and they're exactly the same length. Whatever one of them does, the other one, it's like, if you can do it, I can do it, at least the same, if not better.
It's incredible. Last weekend, Refner had a good qualifying run at Minnesota, but he had a flat tire early and lost 5 laps as they tightened the rear end plate on the car. Sensiva looked to have a flawless afternoon going. He was running in 4th position late in the going, and then he dropped a cylinder, so they only finished a few positions apart. Look back in row number 15, Ken Schrader and Gary St. Amant. Now, Gary is in Butch Miller's backup car, and that's really a questionable effort here this afternoon.
Brad Loney back on the 16th row. He too had some mysterious fuel delivery gremlins that they hope they have finally solved. Tony Roper's back there. And the 18th and final row on the racetrack, Steve Barnes alongside Ken Lund. Lund had a lot of trouble just getting here. They ran into a bad stretch of road there, bad weather, and they wrecked the transporter. Fortunately, the car was okay, and they managed to get here.
The field now has filed past the main grandstand area for the second time, getting the oil temperature up, and momentarily we will be going green flag racing. Here we are way back in the back of the pack. Ken Schrader, it was Gary Ballou that drove that car in practice. Gary St. Amant, that looks just like Butch Miller's car, but that is in fact his backup car.
And Gary St. Amant had a heck of an incident in practice yesterday. He went to our TV truck to look at it on replay.
I realized the roof was off, and I thought I was upside down.
Really?
Yeah. Like right about there, I think I realized that I almost felt like I might be upside down right there for a second. When the Wins Ford Thunderbird went into the corner, you know, it felt like, at first in the car, my first thought was something locked up, but what happened after seeing the video, the Panhard bar broke, the body rolled over onto the left rear tire, blew the left rear tire out. That's what sent the car spinning. And, you know, after looking at the video now, you know, I remember the first feel that I had of something wrong, and I didn't get out of the gas until the car was sideways. And maybe if I would have got out of the gas, you know, maybe the car wouldn't have come on around. It's hard to say.
The whole purpose of those roof flaps was to allow air to escape from inside the race car, to keep pressure from building up, so that if it turned sideways, would not start the process of barrel rolling. We noticed as we watched that video 2 and 3 times, the flaps did their job, they came open, but really an added benefit. It looks strange to see the roof come off, but it too kept that car on all fours.
And Gary St. Amant was able to walk away from that one with absolutely not a scratch. And even though he might have been shaken just a little bit at that kind of speed when he went up there and kissed the wall, well, at least he's out there in the race. Here's some of the guys that didn't make the field. Alec Pinsino had some problems in practice. He took it around over in the turn 4 area and was not able to get his car going again. Todd Oliver, Russ Gamester made a late arrival and just couldn't get things together either.
Hey, we're half a lap from going racing. We're going to go in car with a couple of machines this afternoon. Third in the points is Steve Holtzhausen in that AFCO Phillips 66 Pontiac. And this is the view that Steve Holtzhausen will get. Now, we're also going to take a peek at Steve as this race progresses this afternoon, and maybe we can see some facial expressions. And out the back of Steve Holtzhausen's car, a view that he hopes to see a lot of this afternoon with other cars lined up behind him.
That's the 7th row behind him. The other in-car camera is in the number 53 machine there, Scott Hansen's AFCO Hansen Motorsports Ford Thunderbird. That's looking out the front at the tail end of Mike Eddy. There is the driver, Scott Hansen himself. And here he is looking out the back of his race car at the Butch Miller automobile there on the inside of the row behind him.
Brian, they're coming off turn 4, and we are ready to go racing for the first time in 8 years at Michigan International Speedway.
And the pole sitter, Bob Seneker, for the 3rd time in a row. He has that inside front row position. Next to him, another great veteran driver, Mike Miller. And here we go. It's underway. The GM team worked 150 laps of the 2-mile high bank, high-speed oval here in Brooklyn, Michigan.
3 wide into turn number 1. Mike Eddy uses the low line and takes the lead away from pole sitter Bob Seneker.
And here we go on the backstretch now, approaching the half-lap mark. These guys spreading out all over the racetrack. From qualifying, Rob Albright, we would expect that a handful of cars would be very fast, but that does not take into account the fact that they had a practice session after qualifying, and you know that some of these race car drivers went out there and fixed what little bit of problem they had that kept them off the pole position, and they're all going to be racing hard. Half of the field and a few guys coming up from the back as well.
Brian, the first couple of days here, Friday and Saturday, the drivers getting acclimated to their cars at high speeds at MIS. Yesterday, after qualifying, the drivers getting accustomed to drafting. We saw them running in coveys of 4 or 5 automobiles, but cream rises to the top as Mike Eddy and Bob Seneker now begin to stretch it over the 3rd place car of Scott Holtzhausen.
The seven-time champion Mike Eddy out in front of the 88 Goodwrench Pontiac. There is Scott
And there is
Hansen.
no Scott Holtzhausen, right? That's Scott Hansen. I'm excited, man. This is great.
This is really something else. And here we are looking out the front of Scott Hansen's automobile at the pair of cars that are in front of him. The 84, that's the blue car right in front. And these two guys are hooked up. And by hooked up, we mean Bob Seneker is now taking the lead away from Mike Eddy. Now Mike Eddy drops into the draft of the 84 car. And these two veteran drivers going at it up front. Scott Hansen pedaling as hard as he can, trying to get up there and join them. And here's the 02 car in the pits.
An early engine problem for Larson, as Randy has brought that Tony's Pizza machine on pit road with an apparent early engine problem.
They have stretched out in a long line on the backstretch. Scott Hansen sitting in 3rd spot. Mike Miller, who sat on the outside of row 1, he's 4th. And here are the 2 leaders now. Bob Seneker trying to run away from everybody like he did in practice. This car that Bob Seneker built with his own 2 hands from the ground up was fast right out of the trailer, as was that of Mike Miller. Those 2 guys parked themselves on the front row, but now Mike Eddy, who was just a tick off in qualifying, is chasing the leader, Bob Seneker.
Now, as we look back at the pack, we're watching the leaders, of course, trying to chronicle some of the drivers that started deep. Kenny Schrader has picked up a number of positions. There's Jay Sauter battling with Joe Knott, and I believe that is for around 9th and 10th positions on this racetrack.
Side-by-side racing early in the event. We would expect that would continue. These guys just trying to settle themselves in a race for 10th. It is Joe Knott in the number 48 car, and that is the Raby Ford Allenot Honda Thunderbird. Next to him, Jay Sauter there in the race for the 10th. But here's side-by-side racing up front as Mike Eddy tries to take a low line. Bob Seneker hanging on to that high side that he used all day Friday, all day Saturday. It looks like he wants to use again here on race day.
Well, there's no substitute for experience on a high bank super speedway. These drivers are accustomed to racing with each other. We've got a problem coming down the main straightaway. The 07 machine of Todd Forbes has lost an engine, and fire comes from beneath the hood of that Noah Yoder machine, and that is a very significant engine fire. Looking for Todd to crawl out the left side. The netting is down, and he's out. It looks like Forbes is going to be okay. A very unusual place, Brian, to have this kind of problem. but it's the place you want it to happen when you're pointed straight down the main stretch.
Todd Forbes looking back over his shoulder at the Thunderbird, the Johns Towing Amvet 8 Yoder Ford Thunderbird. There it is, flaming out from underneath, and he is right dead in the middle of the home stretch, maybe 50 yards short of the start-finish line. And so the fire trucks have a ways to go. They have arrived now, of course, as there Todd Forbes continues to stroll away his day early here, as just a few laps have transpired. 5 laps into the race, we are now down to 35 automobiles. It looks as though the 02 car of Randy Larson was in and has gone back out. We're under caution here at Michigan International Speedway as the track crew attends to the fire on the 07 car. We'll cut away from the action, let you know what happened when you come back to Michigan International. These are some of the people enjoying the GM Teamwork 300. Many of them are GM team members out there, cheering on some of their favorite race car drivers. Their allegiances, well, unknown at this point. We can be certain that they will begin to demonstrate who their favorite race car driver is. Now, Todd Forbes has taken the hike across the almost putting green-like infield here from the point where his race car is resting now. As you can see, the back wheels up on the racetrack, the front in the grass. Todd Forbes is down in the infield with our Chad Myers.
I caught up to him right away and I asked him, said, Todd, are you okay? And you said, yes, I'm fine, but you also said you had a wild ride in there. You couldn't see anything.
Yeah, I hate to have it be such a short day for the No Yoder Ford Johns Towing Thunderbird, but the smoke started rolling in the car, and then I knew that it was on fire. I was trying to get it slowed down, and with all the smoke, I couldn't see, and I got in the grass, turned it around.
Were you trying to slow it down and you lost your brakes too? Could that have been a problem?
Oh, no, the brakes were fine. I just knew that we were running a relatively high speed, and I didn't want to be driving way around the track without being able to see.
Well, Todd Forbes has had a rough season after winning late last year. A lot of folks expected him to be a top 10 contender. I think he's got the talent. We're taking a look at Ken Schrader in car number 52. We said we'd keep an eye on how he is performing here this afternoon. Started way back in 30th position. He's now running in 12th. And not too far behind him is fellow Chevrolet driver Brad Loney, who started in 31st position and has moved up to 18th. So Schrader proving that the fact that he's run here many, many times and that he has competed in several ASA events this season, Brian, he knows what he's doing here.
And of course, for the learning impaired that may not have been with us for the last couple of weeks, we also should mention there will be 2 number 52 automobiles out there occasionally.
I want to know why. Every time you say learning impaired, why do you look at me? I don't know why.
I'm actually the guy because I get confused pretty quick. 52K is Ken Schrader. The 52 is Butch Miller. You'll see them both when we come back to Michigan International. High atop Michigan International Speedway. That's where you're looking down from our aerial view there on the 2-mile high bank super oval. And we are still under caution from the incident that took Todd Forbes out of the race. We heard from Todd, said he had a wild ride, no visibility. And of course, when you can't see out the windshield, you're doing about 165 miles an hour. That's not good.
No, that's never good. But he seemed to be pretty relaxed about it all. Gary St. Amant is out of this race. It's been a very torturous weekend for the young man from Ohio, and Chad Myers is with him.
Because of what you see right there. That is Gary's primary car. Gary, you weren't driving that car. Obviously, that car's unsafe. But you were driving Butch Miller's car. Why are you out with this one?
Well, Chad, yesterday the Wins Ford Thunderbird, the primary car, we broke a rear suspension part and it sent us into the wall and tore the front clip off the Port City chassis. And Butch's crew, the Liberty Ford crew, they put the car together, put a motor in the car last night. They worked their butts off, and I think what ended up happening, I think it broke a rear end.
So this car probably wasn't his primary car. It was obviously his backup car, and you wouldn't expect it to be the best car that he has.
Right. Actually, this car here was actually prepared to go to Berlin next weekend, and we wanted to get out there and get some laps, and unfortunately we couldn't make the whole race. But I think maybe I'll go up in the booth and maybe see what it's like from up there.
Hey guys, want some company up there?
Yeah, why not?
All right, Gary St. Amant, come on down.
No, up.
Up. There we go. Yeah, it's a heck of a climb up here. We are a ways above this racetrack. There's Steve Holtzhausen going out of the pit there, the Baker Enterprises AFCO Phillips 66 Pontiac Grand Prix, and there's a look out the windshield. You'll see some race cars come into that view very shortly, and there's the driver. What a great run he had a few weeks ago. That is a record, of course. 400 out of 400 laps led for this guy.
As we prepare to go back to green, Brian, I've never heard this as a reason for being black flagged. He had stickers on his spoiler on the back end of his race car. Trying to get a little extra plug for his sponsors. That's a no-no. ASA brought him in and made him tape over them.
So Steve Holtzhausen is back out on the racetrack. The blue number 84 of the pole sitter, Bob Seneker, is the car up front. Stalking him, of course, is the number 88 GM Goodwrench Pontiac of Mike Eddy, 7-time champion. And we are back to green flag racing with those two gentlemen leading a parade of ASA drivers. We got some side-by-side action now as everybody starts to tuck in, find the line they want. And we will see now as who will be able to challenge. We're starting to see a little bit of a move underneath by Scott Hansen in the white number 53 on Mike Eddy in the black 88 there. They're side by side behind Bob Seneker.
And as far as I know, Scott has never raced at Michigan International before. And in fact, Brian got very limited practice laps as he brought this machine to the racetrack yesterday morning. He got no time at all on Friday, but very quickly acclimated himself to the high banks, and he's running the same line that he did in practice and qualifying, much lower than most of the other fast race cars.
And it worked for just a minute there. Scott Hansen was able to take second place away from Mike Eddy, but the very patient polar bear in the black 88 there just kept his foot in it and let that high line work for him. Now we're on board here looking out of Hansen's windshield at the tail end of the 88 car.
You know, Scott is driving one of the Ford Thunderbirds, as is front runner Bob Seneker. Before this weekend, the Fords were allowed a slightly larger carburetor because the engines were heavier and they had less development time. For this race, they are using the same 600 CFM carburetor that the GM drivers use. Believe it or not, on the dynamometer, only 8 horsepower difference.
That 8 horsepower might or might not make a difference in who's going to win this race. It's going to take a very patient and capable driver, not unlike that man. There's the other 52 car we were talking about, that series points leader, Butch Miller, who came into the pits under the caution just a little while ago. And Ralph Shaheen, you have a comment about that?
Well, we have Gary Showalter, his crew chief, here with us. Gary, motor problems, what's wrong?
Well, we got a small miss in the motor, and we don't know if it's ignition or we just got the carburetor hit a bit wrong. So we're just going to stay with it and see if we can fix it during the race.
We've also got to report for you that Steve Holtzhausen engine has been smoking a little bit. They're not sure why, and Fort Glen Allen Jr. has to deal with a transmission that keeps jumping out of first gear. So restarts are very tricky for the driver of the number 15 Carquist entry.
Looking out through the windshield of number 78, Steve Holtzhausen there, the Phillips 66 Racing Fuel emblazoned on the dashboard. We know that Butch Miller changed an engine from his short track car into what is now his primary car, of course, the one we call the car with the sunroof, the roof flaps that is. And they were not very, they said they would rather have had the engine that was in that sunroof car, so to speak. So they put the engine that might be just a little bit tired in there, and now we're hearing that, well, tired is something's wrong with it in any case. And with that smaller carburetor, that could be the problem or whatever. Of course, we have definitely talked about the engine problems that Glenn Allen Jr. has had over the last few weeks. There's Brian Reffner, who qualified fourth, and he's charging his way up. It looks like he's found the good groove for the number 5 automobile as well.
Brian is running in 5th position, and he, like about 2/3 of the field, has never been on a racetrack anywhere near this fast. What Brian does have going for him, however, is that he has run a lot of different types of racetracks. Interesting, in talking with Brian yesterday, he rode in a passenger van with Bob Seneker, and he said once Bob showed him the right way into turn number 1, he instantly picked up 5 miles an hour, Brian, and a whole lot of comfort behind the wheel.
Now, was Bob Seneker doing about 170 in that passenger van, or were they just cruising around?
So. I don't think so. To Seneker, you never know whether or not he's telling him the truth or maybe playing a little mind game with him out on the racetrack.
Mike Miller in the number 18 Funco Land Pontiac Motorsports Grand Prix, right alongside Scott Hansen there, just in front. And here's Glenn Allen Jr. racing with, it looks like, Tony Raines in the Cleanburn number 25 machine there. And then we see, I believe that's Brett Bell in the 56 car right behind him. No, that's Joe Knott in the 48. So we had a great 3-up battle here. 3 guys hooked up big time.
Glenn Allen Jr. has had one of those up and down seasons. One, of course, right here on the Nashville Network, coming from a lap behind to win at I-70 Speedway in Odessa, Missouri back in the month of June. And Tony Raines has been absent from a handful of races and driven for other car owners a couple of times. They're back this weekend. They hope race ready to go not only today but through the remainder of this season. His plans are very, I think, much up in the air for 1995.
Glenn Allen Jr. in the number 15 car, Carquest came on board with him them. And they have been very pleased with the way Glenn Allen Jr. has tried to run, but Glenn Allen's success came earlier in the race season before CarQuest came on board, and since then he's had a little bit of problems. There's the 52K of Ken Schrader just ahead of Glenn Allen Jr. The AC-Delco Chevrolet on the outside there, the blue car with the white 52 on the side. We're going to go once again. Ralph Shaheen has a comment about Glenn Allen Jr.'s situation. Ralph?
Well, he's probably got some of the most pressure on him he's had all his career, Brian, and that's the fact that his father, Glenn Allen Sr., ran here at the last time the ASA ran here at MIS, and Glenn Sr.'s been kidding his son all weekend, telling him he out-qualified him, went faster than he did, and he finished 10th, and he likes to remind little Glenn that when he finished 10th, he raced with Rusty and Allen and them, and he says, boy, you better go out there and beat Bob and Mike if you want to live up to our reputation of the Allen family.
Well, Glenn Allen's team, the Troop Motorsports operation changed engine builders as we continue to watch 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th. That's Jay Sauter, Kenny Schrader, Glenn Allen Jr., and Tony Raines. They changed engine builders last week, and they're playing catch-up with this new program. The folks from Sterling Power Plants were here yesterday rejetting the carburetor. They thought they might have a fuel pump problem. They were looking at a lot of different things. Glenn hasn't been especially happy all weekend because he's thought that he had a very good handling car and just needed this engine change. They're still working out some bugs, it appears.
We heard a lot of people having fuel delivery problems, and in going around and kind of canvassing the different crew chiefs and engine specialists and guys in the know, it seemed to be a variety of things, and yet it seemed to me, Rob Albright, perhaps you can shed a little more light on this, unusual to have so many of the cars having fuel delivery problems. I mean, they were literally saying the cars were just getting no fuel at all.
I think a lot of it, Brian, has to do with the centrifugal force that's placed on these race cars on a high-bank super speedway at 180 miles an hour.
And on the high bank, of course, different kinds of problems present themselves as we go back up front and look at Bob Seneker racing just ahead of Mike Eddy, two, of course, of the great veteran drivers, and a third veteran driver running in third spot right now. We're going to put a clock on these guys and see if we can get a time. Now, Bob Seneker qualified for the pole position with a time of 42.048. That's 171.232 miles an hour here at the Michigan International Speedway. So we'll get a chance to see now a comparison in lap time under race conditions and race setup versus what they had out here racing all by themselves.
Qualifying at 170, when they came here earlier this season and tested, Brian, they were running laps at about 165 to 170, but ASA officials knew that depending upon the way they structured the rear spoiler of this race car and the weight at which they came in, they could literally run laps at 180 or more. They've added 100 pounds of weight, which is really taxing on these little V6 engines. 43.3 seconds, and that's about the speed at which our 8th place starter, Glenn Allen, qualified. About 166.2 miles an hour.
So just about a second, a little more perhaps, slower than he qualified. Bob Seneker making laps here with Mike Eddy right behind him. And earlier we asked Bob Seneker if experience at running the high banks was something that would stand him in good stead.
The biggest sensation is the first time you go out when you get the car wound up to maybe 160 or something like that, is when you wiggle the steering wheel just a little bit, the car jumps across the racetrack at least 10 foot. It's like, it feels like it's a go-kart at that speed.
In other words, it takes much less correction to create significant change in direction on the racetrack than it might at a quarter mile or half mile. Now, almost all of the drivers in the field, Brian, use power steering, save for perhaps Mike Eddy and Tony Raines. We know that they both prefer the manual steering, and that may really work to their advantage here, where such small, minute corrections can result in such big movement around the race course.
It's going to take a very smooth race car driver to get around this track all afternoon. There's Mike Miller in the number 18 car, qualified second, currently running third, trying to get up there and hook up with Mike Eddy. And we're going to go down once again to Ralph Shaheen with some word about Jay Sauter.
Well, Brian, you were talking about the fuel pickup, and there's lots of things that can cause you to have problems with your fuel, and one of them is heat. Now, Jay Sauter's crew, this is a spacer. Okay, now this spacer sits on top of the manifold and below the carburetor. It's made out of aluminum, and aluminum gets hot real fast. And when it does, it heats the fuel up as it tries to flow through the middle of this spacer, okay? That costs you horsepower. So they've got another spacer in the number 1 entry, and it's made out of phenolic. Now, phenolic will stay a lot cooler than the aluminum, so when that fuel goes through there, stays a lot cooler, you get better horsepower.
There you have it. Ralph Shaheen chasing the scoops and the news down there, along with Chad Myers, working this long pit road here at Michigan International Speedway. There is the #1 car right there. The #1, of course, on the side of Jay Sauter's automobile, Wisconsin Aviation Delta Faucet Chevrolet. And as you said earlier, Rob Albright, the fortunes of Jay Sauter have been somewhat up and down since that mid-season team change for both him and for Scott Hansen.
He made a spectacular debut in that car on another network that we carried some broadcast from Salem Speedway, a high-banked half-mile where he finished second and was closing on the leader at the checkered flag. Hasn't done quite so well since then in our non-televised race last weekend. He was among the fastest 2 or 3 cars, but had a very lengthy stay in the pits for some mechanical problems.
Speaking of closing on the leader now, Mike Eddy in the #88 GM Goodwrench Pontiac making a low side move on Bob Seneker, trying to take Mike Miller along with him. And it looks as though Mike Eddy gets by as they begin to approach some traffic there. Mike Eddy makes a move, takes the lead here, 24 laps in to the GM Teamwork 300.
Meanwhile, Steve Holzhausen has brought his Pontiac back on pit road. There he is, car number 78. And we'll see from his view, not what you want to see. As Brian Dreber says, this is not good when we're under green.
Well, they're not working on the stickers on the spoiler right now. Ralph Shaheen's down there. What are they working on?
Well, you know, Brian, this is a very tricky situation for them. We're only in 24 laps, as you said. Most of the teams are expecting 40 to 50 laps before it's a regular stop. They've had smoke problems with this car, but every time the car has left pit lane, there's no traces of problems, nothing left on the ground. What you see now back there is just fuel dripping out of the back of the car. They're going to push back behind the wall. We'll go down there and find out what's wrong. We should also report that Joe Knott has lost a battery.
And we should also report that now Mike Miller, who sat outside row 1, has taken the lead away from Mike Eddy, who took it from Bob Seneker a moment ago. So now it is the Funco Land Pontiac Motorsports Red 18 up front right now with Mike Miller behind the wheel. And it has been a long time since Mike Miller won an ASA race, and it was a long time before since he also put a car up on the front row in one of these competitions.
And on a racetrack where a lot of folks said the Fords would dominate, Brian, all these GM invitees, some 35,000 strong this afternoon, have to be pretty excited about what's happening at this point.
Pontiac's running 1-2
and
right
Brian,
now.
maybe not for long, as look at Brian Repner, that fantastic run from the young rookie as he's made his way underneath Mike Eddy for second position, a sight that Mike has never seen before.
Well, we talked about age and treachery versus youth and enthusiasm. It looks like 2 veteran drivers have a rookie sandwich going here right now, and we'll see if the young driver of the #5 car, Brian Repner, in the Structural Transport Thunderbird, can deal with these 2 veteran drivers. He certainly can. He goes down on the low side of Mr. Low Side, Mike Miller, and here comes Mike Eddy trying to get around up high.
A brand new leader, but perhaps not for long, as the kid trying to teach the veterans a lesson, but they battle back. Mike Miller runs second, Mike Eddy third, and Brian Repner showing the way at lap number 28.
We have talked all season long about what a great rookie battle Brian Repner and David Sensiba have been waging, and we saw an opportunity for Brian Repner here, the young driver from Wisconsin Rapids, to open up that rookie battle and maybe take a big chunk out of the points. He now trails David Sensiba by 12 points along the season, and you could cover these 2 guys with a postage stamp from day 1 until right now. But Brian Repner seems to have the very strong automobile. Not only has he made a pass for the lead, but he is trying to drive away from both Mike Miller and Mike Eddy.
And I know we've got a lot of Dave Sensiba fans in our audience. He had all kinds of problems yesterday. It's been an uneventful day thus far. He continues around the racetrack about a half lap down. If we're looking at Steve Barnes in car number 19, who has apparently lost the fire. This was a late race edition yesterday. Steve, who intends to run the full schedule in 1995, is in one of John Freeman's cars for this afternoon's race, but it looks like a short day for Steve.
Mike Eddy and Mike Miller both passed by the young rookie driver. There you can see that there's probably a dozen car lengths between first and second place, and maybe 2 or 3 between second and third. Mike Eddy, one of the veteran drivers, 7-time champion. We talked to him earlier about whether experience would be a factor here at Michigan International.
Yeah, it helps a little. You know, a lot of these guys have never been to a speedway like this before, and so it takes them a while. It even takes me a while to get used to, you know, running them speeds when you don't do it every week. And yeah, I'm sure being here before is a little advantage, and then I felt real comfortable as soon as I got here.
Well, Earlier this season, Brian Refner did get some experience here at Michigan International Speedway, having just passed Mike Miller and Mike Eddy, but he did come here in an open test session earlier this year, and those were valuable laps around this race course.
Well, the two veteran drivers have closed some ground, led by Mike Miller now, who has closed up probably half the distance between himself and Brian Refner's car. As Mike Miller in the Funco Land Pontiac Grand Prix there in second spot. Mike Eddy and his GM Goodwrench number 88 sitting third. And Bob Seneker, who was on the pole and led early in this race, passed by all of these guys, is hanging on there, it looks like, in fourth spot.
It is Scott Hansen all by himself on the racetrack, running in fourth. Fifth position is Brett Bell. Sixth is Harold Fair. And in seventh spot is this battle right here between Kenny Schrader and Glenn Allen Jr. And having gotten a slow restart, Allen now has found some extra speed in that Pontiac, the CarQuest machine.
Down on pit row, Steve Holtzhausen, well, we saw his car go back behind the wall to find out what was wrong with it. A mysterious problem, Ralph Shaheen?
Well, the crew's working on the rear end of the car. You can see Howie Leddow and the boys buried up underneath the Baker Motorsports entry. Steve's still in the car. Steve, what's wrong?
Well, I'll tell you what, the Phillips 66 ASCO Pontiac was running real good, but we're getting some smoke through the dash, and it feels like I got a vibration and it's getting worse, so I figured we better check this thing out before something happens out there. They checked the oil filter and it looks good, so we're going to go back out and see what happens.
As Steve Holtzhausen patiently waits, Steve Barnes is behind the wall, and Chad Myers is with him. Chad?
Well, Steve, it was a short day. We've already documented the fact that you want to go 95 full-time as a rookie here. What happened today?
Well, we just picked up a bad vibration. It might have been some bad tires or possibly some suspension trouble. And this is absolutely no place to be worrying about suspension. Speeds are way too fast. Things happen here so quickly. It's not even funny. But it's quite an experience. We're looking forward to running next year. We're going to do a deal with Motor Performance Treatment and Prano Auto Parts next year. Gee, that's not a shameless plug there, is it? But anyway, we're looking forward to running the next year, next 2 or 3 years at ASA full-time, and we're really excited about it.
All right, Steve out very early today, but he has bigger hopes for next year.
Closing in very rapidly on the top 10 is the driver of the Winnebago Flex Steel Chevrolet car number 33, the youthful one, Brad Loney. It's been a rough weekend for Brad in a number of ways. His grandmother passed away. We extend our condolences to the Loney family, but he's come focused on this race, the GM Teamwork 300. They had a fuel problem yesterday. I don't know if it was a fuel pickup problem, a fuel filter problem. We understand a fuel pump problem for Brad Loney. And he started in 31st position, and now he is reeling in the leaders, closing on Tony Raines and Ken Schrader, and about to move into the top 10.
The leader continues to be young Brian Refner. Here's another young driver, as we mentioned. Brad Loney, number 33, going forward in the number 33 H&W Winnebago machine. Back up front to Brian Refner in the black number 5 there, with Mike Miller running in second spot. The Funco Land Pontiac is running second, and another Pontiac behind them. We're going to commercial break right now, but we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody, to the GM Teamwork 300 at Michigan International Speedway, ASA AC-Delco Challenge Series Racing. Brian Drebber and Rob Albright way up here in the booth. And down on pit road, Ralph Shaheen and Chad Myers. But we are joined now by the driver of the number 7 car, and that is the Winsport City Ford Thunderbird. Gary St. Amant made the big hike up here. Welcome to the Bird's Nest.
It's a long way up here.
Well, we're watching a terrific race out there. We're watching a young driver, Brian Refner, who also drives a Ford Thunderbird like you were a while ago anyway. Of course, you mentioned that your car is no longer in the race. You're up here. Now, why is Brian able to run so far ahead of everybody else right now once he took that lead?
Well, I'll tell you what, Brian, you know, there was some practice up here a couple months ago, and we all knew that Brian Refner was going to be awful fast. He's got a good motor in that Ford Thunderbird, and actually I think a Ford might be the way to go at this super speedway. I know at Milwaukee, you know, that's a big track, and he was awful fast at Milwaukee also.
We're looking at Brian Refner, but what we're going to see in a moment are the next 2 cars about to be lapped as we approach a competition yellow. There they are, Ken Lund on the right side of your screen, car number 23, and yes, right in front of him, it was Gary St. Amant's short-lived teammate for the day, Butch Miller in car number 52. He has had ongoing problems, and this is a situation where with 2 laps to go to the competition yellow, Gary, I don't think he's going to be able to stay on the lead lap.
Well, I'll tell you what, I have an insight on this. One of Butch's crew members come up to me after we got out of the car, and they wanted to know if we had a 600 carburetor. So my guess is they're having carburation problems, and hopefully they can get it fixed during the caution and not lose a lap.
Well, Gary, is it simply a matter of unbolting the bigger carburetor and bolting the smaller one on, or are there changes that have to be made with the engine itself to make it adapt to that smaller carburetor?
Well, they should be able to just unbolt it, and with as big as what the racetrack is here, you know, we got a long period of caution lap, and you know, he should be able to get it changed and not lose a lap.
Changing a carburetor in 1 lap, that's going to be a pretty frantic effort down there.
It will be tough.
For the guys, Gary Showalter and his crew down in the Butch Miller pit. We'll be watching that pretty anxiously, and I'm sure we'll have a camera on it. But right now, we're still looking at, as we mentioned before, competition yellow coming out. And that is something that the American Speed Association uses, Rob Albright, to, we think, the fans' advantage. Now everybody will get a chance to go into the pits, make whatever changes they can, come back out and race for the green flag, or race for the checkered flag, not just drive around out there at the end of the race.
And if you're brand new to ASA racing on TNN, you may not know what the competition yellow is. At different racetracks, a predetermined number of laps can be run consecutively under green flag conditions before ASA officials throw an automatic yellow flag. Now, Gary, in some sanctioning bodies, they claim debris on the racetrack when they want to do that, but do you like this rule or don't you like the rule? Does it create maybe a little different twist on your pre-race strategy?
Yeah, it really does. You know, the first time that we really got to use it was at one of the road courses, and I know that our team had done its homework, and we actually pitted before the competition yellow come out. And, you know, if everybody does the homework, they can use it to their advantage. And another thing here at MIS with the high speeds, you know, we're not sure. We know Goodyear put us on a good tire here, but, you know, we're not really sure what the tire wear is going to be. So competition yellow is definitely helping us here.
And just in case you think that what it does is take the pit crews out of the race, you're going to see in just a few minutes as the top cars all come in that the pit crews very definitely will still be in this race, because track position is going to be what's at stake right now as Brian Reffner, Mike Miller, and Mike Eddy all come in down on pit road and their crews get ready to go to work. Ralph Shaheen will have the call of all the hubbub down there on pit road.
Well, the first one to come to a stop is Brian Reffner and Chad Courtney, the gas man, stuffing the gas into the car. Mike Miller stopped. Mike Eddy is stopped. Brian Reffner will change no tires. Left side tires going on some of the other cars right now. Right sides on Mike Eddy's car. Everybody trying different things with their tires, trying to figure out what they're going to do. Everybody's waiting to see what's going to happen with these tires. As Reffner exits pit lane, so does Mike Miller, and Mike Eddy will follow him as Mike Miller takes 4. For Mike Eddy, I should say. So as you can see, everybody with a different tire strategy. Now, everybody has said that these Goodyear Eagles could legitimately go the distance. But if you got to stop, some of the drivers say, might as well take them. Other drivers, such as Reffner, want to find out just how far they can push these as they set themselves up for race strategy in the closing stages.
So very different strategies indeed. No tires for Reffner, 2 for Mike Miller, 4 for Mike Eddy. We'll get a little bit deeper into that when we come back. Computer hardware for the electronic scoring system used here in the ASA AC-Delco Challenge Series is provided by Gateway 2000. For more information about Gateway 2000 products, call 1-800-846-2060. Boy, that number went away quick.
With a great pit stop, Bob Seneker comes back on the point, and at green, he'll lead this race. We talked about tires and the various strategies utilized by the top 3 running teams. We spoke with Phil Holmer, who's vice president for Goodyear Tire and Rubber, and he said they brought a conservative compound to the racetrack this weekend. Gary St. Amant, what did he mean, and why did we see 3 different strategies utilized?
Well, the tires, it is a hard tire that's been used by some other divisions, and they've never had any problems with them. And actually, I really can't believe that Bob didn't take on any tires, because I was kind of feeling it out to see what we should do for qualifying, and both Bob Seneker and Mike Eddy both told me that new tires, actually they ran their fastest laps on new tires, so it kind of surprised me what Bob had done.
Well, and that was contrary to what I heard snooping around down in the garages. Everybody says conventional wisdom here at MIS tells you that old tires that are scuffed in a little bit, were the faster tires. So these two old cagey guys found out something a little different.
Yeah. Well, we're going to find out for sure because Ralph Shaheen has been talking with Bob Seneker's crew chief. Ralph?
Well, that would be Dan Crawford. Now, Dan, you guys took no tires. How come?
We took 2. We didn't take 4. He liked the car. It's early in the race. We're just trying to conserve stuff.
Okay, now I also heard that there might be not enough fuel in the car. What are you going to do?
Well, you're not supposed to hear that. We're hoping for a yellow. We made a mistake.
Could be costly for the guy who was the fastest in qualifying.
I don't know, Gary. I think 60 miles, 30 green flag laps, they can run that far on a tank of fuel.
Yeah, it shouldn't be any problem for Bob.
Here's the rundown after 42 laps of this race. Dr. Yale Conley, the surgeon from Vienna, West Virginia, a stellar performance, 10th. Ken Schrader had a long pit stop. That's why he's back there at 14th, tightening a panhard bar.
Oh, that was that word that Gary's saying his pace.
Ouch! Oh. Yeah, there's a mark on the wall down there that says panhard bar.
And here's Mike Miller once again, the number 18 car. He took on 2 tires. We know for a fact, at least we thought Seneker didn't take any. We know for a fact that Brian Reffner did not. And there's his number 5 automobile. So it would probably be a pretty interesting question to ask of Brian Reffner. And here he goes, smoking right past Seneker, who has 2 fresh tires on right there. And Reffner once again back to the lead. Here comes Mike Miller in the number 3 spot as well. So we are looking at the pole sitter, Bob Seneker, running second behind the rookie, Brian Reffner.
Gary, when we came here in 1986, you were just a rookie and qualified on the outside of the front row. You've had a lot more, let's say, respect for this place this time around. Now, one thing I've always appreciated about you is your candor. Yesterday, when you climbed out of the race car, I think for maybe an hour, Gary St. Amant might have been ready to retire at that point, but you really gave an impassioned speech this morning at the driver's meeting.
Yeah, after thinking about everything that happened, I mean, it was a faulty part that broke and sent us in the wall. And, there was a lot of concerned people, a lot of concerned drivers that come up to me and ask me about, what had happened. I mean, they were really worried about the race cars. And I told them on the driver's meeting this morning, hey, we had a part break, we got in the wall. I'm standing here talking to you. These are safe race cars, and these guys don't have anything to worry about. I'm just standing up here. I really wish I was out there on the racetrack, because it looks like these guys are having some fun.
Well, racers like to keep their foot stuck in it, and I guess here, as I said at the very beginning of the show, this place just provides you an opportunity to pretty much keep your foot in it all the way around. Is that the case? I know early in practice we heard guys backing off. We saw that little burp of flame coming out of the exhaust pipes early, but later on, it seemed like they were in it all the way around. Is that right?
Well, I'd say, there's probably 5 or 6 guys that can probably hold her all the way down. It's one thing to do it on fairly fresh tires. As the tires heat up, they're probably going to have to get out of the gas a little bit. Then also you got the draft to figure on too, because when you get in the draft, it picks you up about 5 miles an hour going down the straightaway. And you definitely have to lift when you're going in the corner that fast.
Well, it looked like Scott Hansen. There he is again. He looks pretty relaxed. Just a little drive on the freeway here, bending it around the left-hand turns there as he hangs on and now starts to straighten it out. And what's he doing with his thumb there, Gary St. Amant? What's that?
I think he's just getting a little leverage on the steering wheel. Scott looks pretty relaxed in there. And
might be the radio button.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It was the radio button. But you could just tell by looking at the steering wheel, he's not sawing on the wheel. The car is really working good. Look for a good finish today from Scott Hansen.
Gary, when we watch from this perspective, this track looks extremely smooth, is it?
Well, when you get up to that speed, the racetrack is smooth. You just seem to glide over the bumps that are in the racetrack. Going slow out there down at the bottom of the racetrack, it's a little bit rough, but this facility, it's a super nice facility, and can't wait to get back here next year.
Bob Seneker's found something he likes around the outside, or perhaps Brian Reffner having just a little bit of a problem now. Maybe those 2 fresh tires on Bob Seneker's car have come into play a little bit here now. They're starting to work. Mike Miller also gets around the number 5 car of Brian Reffner. And now we have a change for the lead. Out front, it's once again pole sitter Bob Seneker in the number 84 Johnsonville Sausage Machine. And right behind him, it's Mike Miller, who sat on the outside of row 1. So the front row is back up front here at the GM Teamwork 300.
Of course, car number 5, Brian Reffner, running in 3rd position. Mike Eddy being a little patient here this afternoon in the early going, running in 4th. And Brett Bell having a great run in 5th position. We've talked a lot about tires. Ralph, give us your expertise from pit road.
Rob, if you've never seen a race before, when they talk about stickers, it's basically just that. It's a brand new tire, and it has one of these Goodyear stickers on it like that, which wears off after about, half a lap or so. A scuff tire has only got anywhere from 4 to 6 laps on the tire. It's just been basically worked in oh so little. Now, talking to Phil Homer from Goodyear, here's the difference in what you want to do. He says take the sticker tires because they're quicker from the get-go, right out of the box. The scuff tires, it might lose you as much as 100 yards on a restart when you first get going. And in this business, 100 yards can make a world of difference. So when we get into the later stage of this race, there's a competition yellow or a yellow just before the finish. These sticker tires are the way to go. And if you can, take 4. Chad Myers?
Ralph, what we have down here, I want to show you something that you won't see on your tire and your wheel at home. 2 valve stems. There's actually an inner liner inside of our tires. Typically, ASA tires do not have an inner liner, just the outside tire. There's actually a tube or a tire inside a tire. In case there's a puncture in this tire, it will equalize or go down, but there is still another liner inside. At these speeds, you don't want to have a flat tire. You don't want to be running on the rim, so the tube inside will keep this tire inflated and get you around into the pits rather than around and into the wall.
Gary St. Amant up here in the booth with us. You can tell us something about an inner liner tire, because when your panhard bar broke and the suspensions shifted over a little bit, the fender came down and cut the outer part of the tire, but there was still some air left in there.
Yes, there was, and that probably helped keep the car up on the racetrack. You know, if it would have slammed the racetrack with the frame, I have a feeling it would have been a harder hit into the wall, and it actually helped save the car. You know, these Goodyear engineers, they definitely know what they're doing with tires and rubber. And one thing I want to point on here, you know, after seeing what happened during the pit stops, you know, the guys that took on new tires, Phil might be right on the after, you know, right when they first get the green. But I think what you saw happen, you saw Brian real fast there for the first couple laps, and then as the tires get just a little bit of wear on them, like what Bob and Mike and Mike Eddy also has done, you know, you're starting to see those guys come to the front now.
14 cars, gentlemen, still on the lead lap. Bob Seneker, Mike Miller second, car number 5, Brian Revner is third. And let's go quickly to Ralph Shaheen, who's in Harold Fair's pit.
And a problem for Harold. Harold, what's wrong?
Well, apparently the right front wheel bearing or the seal popped out, lost all the grease, and the car started wandering, and I could feel it, and I think one of the spotters saw it out on the track. We broke a hydraulic clutch line on our pit stop. Couldn't get out of the pit, and I guess it's just not our day today.
Harold Fair waiting to get back out here at MIS.
Harold Fair, at our very first race in Denver, had a problem, a little bit of fire inside the car down low. His feet were actually on fire, and he was in a lot of pain for a while now. He has definitely recovered. He still wears one shoe kind of cut out a little bit when he's walking around down on pit road. But Harold Fair down inside having troubles. Brian Revner running in third behind veterans Bob Seneker and Mike Miller. That's the way things stand right here at Michigan International Speedway. 55 laps gone, and the rest when we come back. The yellow has come out. Steve Holtzhausen in the number 78 Baker Enterprises entry has gone around up there in turn number 4. Motorhome facilities for Group 5 sports and the AC-Delco Challenge Series are provided by Winnebago Industries. For more information about Winnebago, call 1-800-643-4892, Winnebago Industries. And now it looks like Holtzhausen has collected up the number 78 car there, the AFCO Phillips 66 Pontiac there, Baker Enterprises entry. He's heading down towards pit road right now. And Gary St. Amant, what are we looking at right here?
Well, I think he either cut a right front tire down, or there's just some suspension parts on the right front that are damaged. I can tell that the right front of the car is laid over just a little bit.
That's, would you call that negative stagger there? As the right side's laying down just a little bit anyway. Steve Holtzhausen comes into pit road. I'm sure we will have somebody down there, either Chad Myers or Ralph Shaheen, who will figure out what's going on, and we'll be able to take a look at what they do to the car. They're certainly going to the right side, Ralph.
That they are, Brian. They'll take the opportunity to fuel the car as well. Howie Leddow said he said nothing to them about what went wrong. They have now killed the motor, changed the right side tires. They'll come around and do the lefts as well. And as soon as they get down all squared up, Steve Holtzhausen will head back out.
There he sits patiently in the driver's seat. There's a look from the in-car camera at Steve Holtzhausen, who is waiting for the crew to work on the left side of the race car right now. And he will go back out on under the caution that his spin brought out. So whether he cut down a tire or not, we still don't know for sure. And now some of the leaders will also come down on pit road. The leaders being Bob Seneker, the pole sitter in the blue number 84, Mike Miller in the Funcoland number 18, who sat outside of the front row, and all the leaders back on pit row. Let's see what they do this time, Rob Albright and Gary St. Amant. Who takes tires and how many?
Gary, go ahead. Come on, you're the expert here. Let's say you're sitting in one of these race cars. What do you hope your crew is doing if you're Bob Seneker?
Well, I hope they're going to get me out first. I'm hoping I'll tell you what, it looks like Bob,
answer.
I'll tell you, Bob is having super pit stops here today. I mean, we didn't know that Bob changed tires the first time, and boy, those guys are on today.
He did. The first stop, he got out quicker than some of the guys who had taken on tires. I mean, had not taken on tires as he did.
There goes Bob Seneker back out on the racetrack. Mike Miller's crew up on the left side now, so he's got 4 tires this time around. It looked like they had the right side up a moment ago. Jim Duffy, the Jackman, busy down on pit row with the number 18 car. They got 4, it looks like, and they're going back out. Speaking of pit stops, our Young Racers feature this week involves just that very subject. Let's go to our colleague Josh Duvall with this week's Young Racers feature.
This week's question comes from Rory of Decorah, Iowa, and he wants to know, what if during a long race you gotta go to the bathroom? So we went to ASA's funny man, Gary St. Amant.
Well, for the most part, your mind is so into the race car that you don't have time to think about going to the bathroom. But we did have a chance down in Pensacola, Florida. We got a caution, and I went off the backstretch and kind of went down in some weeds and took care of business down there. But for the most part, your mind is just so in tune to the race car, you don't even think about going to the bathroom. I'd say most professional sports players would be the same way.
Thanks, Gary. If you have a question, send that in your photograph to The Young Racers, P.O. Box 26792, Charlotte, North Carolina 28221.
Well, St. Amant, what I'd like to know, is this a family problem? I mean, earlier this year at Cedar Rapids, your sister Michelle was in a porta-john for about 30 minutes during a rainstorm and didn't seem to have any problems when she came out. What's going on with the St. Amants?
Well, I don't know, but I think they gave me the toughest question for the Young Racers segment.
Hey, you got some parents celebrating an anniversary, don't you?
Yes, I do. Friday they had their, I think it was probably their 32nd wedding anniversary.
Yeah, I'd check, man, if I were you.
So I'd like to wish him a happy anniversary.
Gary St. Amant, of course, driving the Winsport City Ford Thunderbird yesterday in qualifying up against the wall. He started the race here today, and I think you said it was the rear end went out on you in the backup car for Butch Miller. Of course, Butch's primary car has given him some trouble, and we certainly appreciate Gary St. Amant helping us out up here in the booth as we look back out onto the racetrack. There's Brian Reffner, there's Mike Eddy. We have seen them run up front all day long. We're 60 laps into this GM Teamwork 300 miles on the 2 mile. Mr. Math tells us that's 150 laps of racing that we'll be looking at here today, and we're getting ready to go back to green.
And Gary, as you head out, what do you think about this incredible crowd?
Well, I'll tell you what, Rob, we were down on pit road before drivers' introductions, and boy, it raised the hair on my arms. You know, the round of applause that all the drivers got. Super crowd here today. We were here back in 1986 with another sanctioning body, and I don't think they had this many people in the stands. I mean, it's super great turnout today.
And considering the fact that this was not exactly a private party, but it was sort of a kind of an invitation deal going on. In other words, the word wasn't widely spread that this event was going to be held here today, but the folks at GMSPO, the various General Motors divisions and so on, a lot of tickets were distributed to employees of General Motors to come out here. They brought the big show to town, the ASA, and the folks in the stands, the tens of thousands of them as we look down from our perch up high, are really enjoying a terrific race. So far, it can only get better, of course, as we get closer to the checkered flag.
And Chad Myers has some more guests on pit road as we let Gary St. Amant head back that direction.
Well, Gary's coming down here to see his parents, of course. Now, Bud, you told me your anniversary this week was how many?
I'm sure it was 33.
Now I have to ask Ruth the date, because I know guys never remember. Ruth, when was that?
September the 9th.
All right, guys, here they are. Mr. and Mrs. Gary St. Amant, I guess. Their father and mother right here. Great bunch of folks. A family affair here down in the pits.
Well, he was only off by one.
Only off by one. That wasn't
bad. Not too bad. How old are you? No, maybe you had better answer that.
We thank Gary St. Amant once again for helping us out here in the booth. Brian Drever and Rob Albright will continue with Chad Myers and Ralph Shaheen down on pit road. I guess Gary's going to find himself a spot to watch And you got any favorites real quick before you go, Gary? Who do you like winning this thing?
Well, I'll tell you, Bob Seneker's been fast here all weekend, and it's got to be awful tough for anybody to beat him. But there's 6 or 7 cars, probably 10 cars out there that can win this race. And, you know, the drafting comes into play here, and, boy, you're going to see a super good finish. I wish that Wins Ford Thunderbird was out there in that lead draft. But, you know, hey, I want to say hi to all the Wins people back in Azusa and let them know that we're going to come back strong at Berlin this next weekend and hopefully put the car up front and win us a race.
Well, as much as we like having you up here in the booth with us, Gary St. Amant, I have to say we would prefer to see the Winsport City Ford Thunderbird out there on the racetrack as well with you firmly behind the wheel. We thank you again.
Thank you, Brian.
A lot of changes up front. We've got the veteran Mike Eddy setting the pace. Let's talk rookies for a minute. It's the rookie Brian Refner chasing the wannabe rookie for 1995. That's Californian youngster Brett Bell, and he's turning in a stellar performance in that Wunderbar Besco Ford Thunderbird, running in the 2nd position. And Brian, he has not been out of the top 5 all day. Meanwhile, right behind them, Jay Sauter is being pressured by Brad Loney for 5th position.
So a pair of rookie drivers running 2-3 behind the veteran Mike Eddy right now. Brett Bell in the number 56 entry, the red car there, the Wunderbar beverage dispenser Coca-Cola Chevrolet, qualified 6th. And we have got all kinds of action in this race. There's the number 1 car of Jay Sauter also working hard. And that AC-Delco number 52 Chevrolet creeping up from the 29th starting position all the way up to racing for the lead. He picked up a lot of positions in this race one way or another, and one way was on the restart. Take a look, middle of the screen, high left there. This is the restart as we went back to green. Watch that red, white, and blue car rocket through the field.
There's a painted restart line coming off turn number 4. As soon as the leader hits that mark, passing can begin. Schrader was very alert, got the jump, got the downshift, and picked up a half-dozen spots on the restart. And now he goes to the high side. He's passed Brad Loney for 5th. Jay Sauter moves over and gives the veteran of this facility plenty of racing room. Loney trying to use the same line around Jay Sauter. Jay will squeeze back up and maintain 4th position.
Well, of course, Ken Schrader raced here most recently of all the drivers who are out there on the track when he raced here with the Cup Series, and now Ken Schrader showing that experience on the restart stood him in good stead. And that close-up view showed you the little K there, a special K. Ken Schrader with his number 52 automobile is racing up front again, just ahead now of the this whole quartet of cars, trying to learn a little something from one of the masters as he comes back to race with the American Speed Association every chance he gets.
Kenny Schrader is 4th, Brad Loney 5th, Jay Sauter 6th, 7th is car number 25. That is Tony Raines. Tires will be the story all afternoon. And what can you update us on now from pit road, Ralph? What changes were made this time on pit road?
Rob, this is what happened to Steve Holzhausen. This tire here is the right front of the 78 car. You see this hole here? That's what sent him into the wall. Now, just as the car dropped, you can see all this here. This is what happens when the bodywork rubs on the tire. This is the left rear just before he went into the tire. That bodywork really chewed things up. Now, when the teams came here to MIS at the Goodyear tire test earlier in the summer, they chalked these tires up to find out where the bodywork was rubbing so they can avoid rubs that tear tires like that.
Great battle for 4th position shaping up between Ken Schrader and Brad Loney. Schrader was able to more easily get around Jay Sauter, but having accomplished that, it looks like young Brad may have gone to school, Brian, as he moved around Sauter on the high side as well.
Well, Brad Loney has always been a guy on a sharp learning curve. He's a very bright young man, keeps his head up, his eyes open, and he is watching a very good race car driver with a lot of experience here at MIS just ahead of him. There's a look at the top 5 and the rest as we go to commercial. We'll be right back. The AC-Delco Challenge Series on TNN is brought to you in part by Win Oil Company, makers of quality automotive car care products. Remember, when it's wins, it works. By Mr. Goodwrench, the GM expert at participating GM dealerships. And by Super America. At Super America, we never stop. And by Las Vegas, home of the Las Vegas 300, the ASA Championship Race. Out on the racetrack here at Michigan International Speedway on the long backstretch. We are looking at the front-running automobiles. They're just disappearing out of the left side of the screen is the leader. Here's the race for second place. Two young drivers, number 56, Brett Bell from California, number 5, Brian Refner from Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin. And here is Bob Seneker working his way up towards Ken Schrader. And these guys racing a little bit further back in the field, but after the pit stops where Seneker took on tires, he's heading back towards the front again. Here's the race for second and third, as we mentioned before, two young drivers. Brett Bell from California, Brian Refner, and Refner indeed, Rob Albright. Bob's here too. Rob's dad, Bob, is here, so I've been confused all weekend long. But it does indeed look like Brian Refner has and is taking the opportunity to put some ground in between himself and David Sensiba, who didn't qualify as well and isn't racing quite as well out here right now. Run the field down. Where are these guys?
Don't count Sensiba out quite yet. As we saw last weekend at Minnesota, Refner is running in the third position. There he is behind Brett Bell. Kenny Schrader fourth, Bob Seneker fifth, Brad Loney is sixth. Jay Sauter showing in the 7th position. Mike Miller rides 8th. Tony Raines 9th. Also on the lead lap are Kent Stauffer in car number 90. Dave Sensiba in car number 4 is 11th, still on the lead lap. Glenn Allen Jr. 12th. Scott Hansen 13th. And the last lead lap automobile, the surgeon, Dr. Yale Conley. 14 cars still on the lead lap this afternoon at the halfway point.
But in defense of my comment about Brian Refner and Dave Sensiba, 10 positions on the racetrack is huge. It's enormous. It's colossal compared to the way these two guys have raced all season long. And we have joked about it, we have chuckled about it, we have commented about it, we have seriously tried to figure out why it's going on. But literally since the very beginning of this racing season, David Sensiba in the number 4 car, Brian Refner in the number 5 car, their cars are even numbered only one apart, have just been inseparable in that rookie battle.
Well, now not only Bob Seneker, but Mike Miller also have gotten around both Ken Schrader and car number 33, Brad Loney, as we have arrived, I think, at the halfway point of this race, this time past the start-finish line.
Well, those two home-built cars that were on the front row when we started this race are showing why they were the fastest two cars once again. And the leader at the Wins Halfway Challenge, number 88, Mike Eddy. He's been chugging along out there in front, letting the battle develop behind him between those two rookie drivers. And for leading at halfway, Mike Eddy piles on yet another honor in his illustrious career. There's the 88 car once again, the GM Goodwrench Pontiac, that black 88, a familiar fixture here. Out of 14 starts in the 1994 season, Mike Eddy has won 5 races and yet is still second on points for the season, at least right now. Things could change here today, however, Rob Albright, as Butch Miller is having his troubles and Mike Eddy is running up front. An 8th championship for the Polar Bear. It is unbelievable that anyone could win that many times.
It certainly is, and Mike has had a great season, though. Butch Miller has completed 98% of all possible laps. That's why he's still in the points lead. Mike Eddy has completed 90% of the laps, so he's had some more mechanical problems. Do you keep calling me Rob Albright instead of just Rob because you're afraid I'm going to forget my last name?
I don't know. I got to keep reminding myself where I am and pinching myself to make sure this is real. I can't believe how much fun we get to have every weekend doing these American Speed Association races. And such a variety of racetracks. Now, of course, the latest being the Super Speedway. Let's go down to pit road. Ralph Shaheen, if you're having half as much fun as I am, of course, you know we're having twice as much fun as you.
Brian, we're having an amazing amount of drama right now with car number 53, Scott Hansen. He's got a flat right front tire, a tire that is going down in a hurry. Now, you know that right front tire is the tire that is taking the most abuse as you go into these left-hand turns. All the weight is on that tire. They didn't even have a right front mounted up and ready to go. They got one now, but now the problem is that when you put the lug nuts on down here, this super adhesive that sticks into the rim takes half an hour to dry. There's no way he could hang out there for half an hour with a tire the way it is. So the crew is going to have to actually carry this tire out flat like this, then quickly put it up on the tire and take a handful of lug nuts with him to get this tire mounted up as quick as they can. Drama big time for Scott Hansen right now.
And Brian, that is not fun like we're having up here in the booth.
Well, what we may end up seeing is whoever the right side tire changer is may end up looking like one of the Karamazov brothers out there juggling those lug nuts, trying to get them onto the car. Because when he tries to get a wrench on them, if it slips off, as Ralph Shaheen has mentioned, they glue the lug nuts on so that they'll stay there while they stick the wheel on. Then they can use that speed wrench to go around and tighten all 5 of them up. And if the lug nuts start falling off and they have to start juggling lug nuts down there, it could look like a circus act.
We're looking at first, second, and third positions. That is Mike Eddy, Brett Bell, and Brian Refner. But these guys need to start taking a glance in their rearview mirror. Over the last 3 laps, Bob Seneker has picked up 2/10 of a second, or 2 full seconds, and is only now about 3 seconds behind this front-running trio.
Side by side for second place behind Mike Eddy. Brett Bell, number 56 car, taking the high line, and Brian Refner keeps trying to find a way around the low side. He gets just inside and then has to back it out when they get onto the straightaways. Mike Eddy, meanwhile, just pedaling along up front there, probably unconcerned for the most part because he is such a cool customer about what's going on behind him. He's watching the track up front.
We just talked about the gap between first and fourth. Bob Seneker, who was in for a rather lengthy pit stop on the last caution. Mike Eddy, I don't believe, did come in. Seneker has worked his way through 10 or 12 other race cars to move to fourth position. Last time we checked, it was 3.66 seconds. It has shrunk in the last 2 laps to 1.8 seconds. So the man who sat on the pole continues to be the fastest car on the racetrack, at least as we have just crossed the halfway point.
Bob Seneker working his way back up to what he feels like is his rightful place here at the GM Teamwork 300 Michigan International Speedway. We're 81 laps into a 150-lap race. And the leaders up front. And here comes Bob Seneker. We don't have to worry about an interval now. He'll be in the same picture with the front 3 cars in just a moment.
Mike Eddy has been out front today. Again, let's catch the interval. Here comes Refner to challenge Brett Bell for second. And I think Refner may sense that fellow Ford driver Seneker is coming and want to tuck in behind Mike Eddy as quickly as he can.
1/10 of a second he made up that time. Bob Seneker and Ralph Shaheen. What's going on, Bob? Bob Seneker's car is very fast again.
Well, it might not be for very long, Brian. We'll have to keep an eye on it. He is smelling smoke from the rear end, reportedly in the 84. We'll keep our eye on it.
Well, he has been running that car awful hard to get up to the front. Here's Jay Sauter down on pit road. The hood's getting ready to come up. That, of course, as we have mentioned many times in the past, is not good. So Jay Sauter has brought the number 1 car down on pit road, the Wisconsin Aviation Delta Faucet Chevrolet. Ralph?
They're looking all over what would be the driver's right side of the engine. Danny Stillman, crew chief, looking in there as well, trying to find something, anything. They shut the motor down, and we'll see if they push Jay behind the wall.
Jay Sauter looking a little dejected there inside the cockpit of the number 1 automobile. We're going back up front here as Mike Eddy continues to lead ahead of Brett Bell and Brian Refner with Bob Seneker. Differential problems, maybe yes, maybe no. We'll be right back to Michigan International in a moment. We're back at the GM Teamwork 300, Michigan International Speedway in Brooklyn, Michigan, somewhat west of Detroit, the Motor City. We're looking at the race up front, and that is Mike Eddy, Brett Bell, then Brian Refner, then Bob Seneker, the pole sitter, and those 4 have pretty much run away from the rest of the field. Mike Miller running in a lonely 5th spot. A terrific race going on for 6 behind these guys, but this is what's going on up front. Here is that race we talked about, and what a crowd out there on the racetrack running in 6 spots.
6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. It's currently Schrader 6th. 7th, a side-by-side duel past the start-finish line between Tony Raines on the low side, the blue and white car number 25, and the red number 33 of Brad Loney. Now you see Scott Hansen, who continues to amaze and terrify his crew as he stays on the racetrack with his equalizing right front tire. The number 23 machine is Ken Lund. He is a lap down. The car leading this pack is Ted Smokestad, and what a story that Jacobs Hope Chevy. He got no practice time yesterday, is running right with this lead pack of automobiles, but a lap off the pace as he's just getting used to this racetrack. No practice yesterday, as I mentioned.
Cars running what looks like 6th through 11th place, as you mentioned, though, off the pace by a lap, but everybody's racing hard out there right now. And this quartet, this looks like the Blue Angels, the Air Force formation flying team out there. Look at these guys.
3 wide, 4 wide momentarily. Scott Hansen and Ken Lund are being sandwiched between Hansen and Brad Loney. Ken a lap down. He'll give these guys on the lead lap a little bit of breathing room.
Ken Lund of the number 23 car. We mentioned earlier that he had a hauler crash on the way here. They completely destroyed the dually that pulls the vehicle. The trailer sustained heavy damage, but they were able to get another puller underneath it. Got here, got the race car ready to go, but he had very little time on the track in the number 23 car. Back up front again, it's still Mike Eddy, then the rookie, or rookie-to-be, Brett Bell from California. There's a good look once again. The number 88 GM Goodwrench Pontiac running up front. Then Brett Bell in the number 56 automobile, and that is the Wonder Bar beverage dispenser Coca-Cola Ford. Seneker making a pass for third place around Brian Refner's Ford Thunderbird. And now we have a trio of Thunderbirds behind the Pontiac of Mike Eddy.
Isn't it interesting how easily Seneker caught these other three drivers, and now that he's there, he's having a little more difficulty getting around. You really have no sense as you're watching on television of the buffeting that goes on behind the wheel of these race cars. Bob, I still do believe, has the strongest car on the racetrack at this juncture, Brian, but it's not so easy to get around these guys having caught them.
And Brian Refner is not so willing to surrender at this point. No white flag out the window of the number 5 car as Brian Refner goes right back to third place and intends to stay there. Seneker's moment in third was short-lived indeed.
And I think the next time past the start-finish line, we've run now 30 laps under green, so anticipate seeing a competition yellow. Brett Bell would like to lead them as we see a twitch in car number 56, very aggressively off turn number 4, but down to the stripe, it's going to be, I think, Mike Eddy will lead them to the competition yellow. And now we'll have another exciting race to pit road.
Another exciting round of pit stops down there, as we have seen tires changed, either none, 2, or 4. We have seen a couple of different situations going on down on pit road as these leaders will come into pit. We will have another round of interesting strategies, no doubt. Right now, though, Ralph Shaheen is in the pit of the Jay Sauter camp.
And they're working on the motor. Jay, what happened to it?
It looks like it broke a rocker arm. It's a real tough break for this all-star racing team. They've worked real hard since I've come on board, and there's good things to come. We just got to get through the bad luck and look to the good.
Jay Sauter done from the back.
What a shame for Jay Sauter, whose debut in car number 53, or rather car number 1, was in second position. We've got Mike Miller off the pace. He's coming to a stop over in turn number 3. And for about the 7th race in a row, I think, Brian, it's going to be a short day for Mike Miller.
Mike Miller had a string of 8 top 10 finishes since then. He hasn't been able to buy any good luck with any amount of money. We'll be right back with more from the GM Teamwork 300. Welcome back to Michigan International Speedway, where the American Speed Association and the AC-Delco Challenge Series continues with 92 laps gone in a 150-lap race. We are under yellow, and probably the biggest development involves the outside front row car number 18, the Funco Land Pontiac Motorsports entry of Mike Miller, who just simply slowed and stopped on the backstretch and has been pushed back into the garage area. We also had a lot of excitement down on pit road as Brian Refner and this car, the number 56 automobile, came in together. Here's what happened.
And what really happens, Brett Bell actually will slide just past his pit stall, and Brian Refner overslides his as well. Now, I thought that were the case. In fact, Refner is where he belongs. It was Brett Bell's crew that had him stopping 1 stall too short. So lay the blame on the crew member responsible for bringing Brett Bell to a stop in his respective stall.
Brett locked him up. Brian Refner tagged him from behind. Certainly hope that there's no significant damage sustained in that low-speed crash. Of course, these cars do not have 5-mile-an-hour bumpers on them like those that you and I drive out on the street. But nevertheless, we're back racing here, and it looks as though we have a new race leader as well.
It does look like, surprise of surprises, that Scott Hansen, not the car number 80 that you're looking at. Greg Freed is, in fact, a couple of laps off the pace. There is your new leader, Scott Hansen, in car number 53. And just a few moments ago, we were holding our breath, hoping that he would see caution before he tasted a concrete retaining wall with that tire going down. That's a little more bravado, I think, to run under those conditions that I might have been able to muster.
We also have now a new guest up here in the booth, and we might say we are in the presence of near royalty, considering the entourage that this gentleman and his cohorts have gathered for us here at Michigan International Speedway. We're going to introduce to you right now Bill Lovejoy of the General Motors Service Parts Operations. He's the Vice President and General Manager. And Bill, welcome, first of all, to our booth, and second of all, you have got one heck of a crowd out there, and a lot of them are folks that work with you.
It's a wonderful day for us. It's a great Michigan day on a Sunday, good-sized crowd of about 30 to 35,000 we've anticipated.
Well, they said we had over 30,000 people here an hour and a half before the start. Now, was it your job for the weather? Because if so, I got to tell you, you did a super job. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3 identical days, practice qualifying, and now a race under exactly the same conditions. I know the drivers and the pit crews wouldn't ask for anything more.
Stick with GM. We bring good weather.
All right. Out on the racetrack right now, there are some of the crowd, of course, and every time we point a camera at them, these people are standing up and giving us the hi-ho. There's some more of them, and you can see as they kept opening sections of the grandstand, they started filling them up here in the middle, of course, to give everybody the best spots along the start-finish line, but they kept having to open sections of the grandstand, and as soon as they did, they filled them right up.
Well, Brian, as you were talking to Bill, we've had a major development. There it is, car number 5, Brian Refner. You saw the hood of his race car in the back of a safety vehicle. Now, that might be okay at a quarter mile like Anderson or a half mile like Minnesota. That's not going to work aerodynamically here at MIS. We'll have to keep an eye now to see if safety officials bring him in or if Brian will continue around the racetrack simply off the leader's pace.
What you're trying to tell me is that at 170 miles an hour, no hood is not good.
That's right.
We have yet another item on the list of things that are not good. What is good is the action here at the GM Teamwork 300. We'll have more of it in just a moment. At Michigan International, Mike Eddy has leaped back into the lead here in the GM Teamwork 300, driving the GM Goodwrench Pontiac. How appropriate is that? And then in second spot right now is Scott Hansen from Green Bay, Wisconsin. In third spot, pole sitter Bob Seneker. Mike Miller, who sat on the outside of the front row, is behind the wall. We're chasing the story on what happened to the number 18 car, but these are the 3 leaders out there on the racetrack right now, Rob.
And right behind this threesome is a great battle for 4th position. There it is on the high side, Glenn Allen Jr. dueling with Brett Bell. They've fallen a little off the leader's pace, no fault of their own. Several lap cars that separated them as we do single file restarts. That's Glenn Allen 4th, Brett Bell 5th, and Brad Loney runs in 6th position. Behind them, some distance, is car number 52, Ken Schrader. He's 7th. And you know what, Brian? We've talked about this Refner-Sensiva thing over and over and over again, and with Refner's problems now without the hood, Sensiva is on the lead lap and is about to go around Brian Refner for position.
It is absolutely mystical how these two have raced neck and neck all season long. We have mentioned before that when one of them has a good race, so does the other one. When one of them has a bad race, it might be 200 laps later, the other guy gets behind the wall or drops out or loses a bunch of laps. And here now, we saw Brian Refner, who qualified 4th, started up front, ran on the front all day long, and we have yet to see David Sensiva. But now, all of a sudden, Brian Refner, through no fault of his own, the hood's off his car, he's having trouble, and Sensiva's gaining on him, and David Sensiva is the points leader in that rookie battle. The real irony of this whole thing, as we mentioned before, Rob Albright, privately, $40,000 to the winner of the Pat Shower Memorial Rookie of the Year competition for 1994, and the sad part is it's a winner-take-all competition, so for the runner-up, it's thanks for playing our little game, and you're no longer a rookie.
Ralph Shaheen is down in Brian Refner's pit. That crew has got to be devastated, Ralph.
Well, they're pretty busy right now. Actually, Rob, they're trying to locate a hood. What they're afraid of is that the right front quarter panel is going to come flying off due to the wind being buffeted around in there. If you take a look at the car, you can see it just starting around in the air as he storms around here at MIS. The car is not handling well at all. He is looking for any hood to mount up on that car.
And we'll reiterate, Ralph and Brian, that it really was not Brian Refner's fault. He was coming to a halt very smoothly in his own pit stall, but Brett Bell was already there.
And in the excitement of everybody pitting on the lead lap there under our competition yellow, it also, we shouldn't point too many hard fingers even at Brett Bell's crew. They came out over the wall, and Brett Bell just stopped a little short, kind of half in, half out of his own pit stall. Brian Refner came up behind, tagged him, and that seems to be what has led to the problems now as the hoods come off the number 5 car. As we look at number 25, Tony Raines making a move inside there, and the ETR E&L Brokerage Cleanburn Chevrolet puts a move on 15, Glenn Allen Jr.
Well, we've alluded to Glenn's clutch problems earlier. I don't know if that's the trouble now, but he slid that several spots as Kenny Schrader now has moved into 5th position behind Brett Bell. Brad Loney is sitting behind Schrader.
The Battle for second spot there between number 53, Scott Hansen, in the white car, and number 84, the Bluebird, Bob Seneca, who sat on the pole. Mike Eddy just continues to be like Teflon Man out there. I mean, nobody can touch him, and nothing seems to stick to him. He just motors along out in front, and everything goes on inside. Here's the pass for second place now. We'll see if Bob Seneca can do anything with the 88 GM Goodrich car.
Seneca moves to second. He was fastest in practice, set the pole position speed and a new track record, because this is the first time at Michigan International for this particular ASA race car, which was all new in 1992, and obviously has answered resoundingly the question, are these cars and are these drivers suitable to make the unreal transition, Brian, from the quarter mile, same cars, a lot of them, other than those sunroofs that you talk about, the roof flaps, to here at Michigan International Speedway. That and 100 pounds of extra weight.
Well, I think the answer is a resounding yes. And Bill Lovejoy standing up here from our high, lofty position over top of the racetrack, you've got to be pretty tickled seeing a car with GM Goodrich plastered all over it, leading this race for as long as he has been.
Yes, we've got 5,000 employees here, and it looks like bookends with Eddie number 1 and Ken Schrader in the AC-Delco car number 5. So we're pleased for both our customers and our employees that are here today.
Of course, Bill, you have to play favorites, understandably, but you've got to really appreciate the fact that the American Speed Association brings competition to the forefront. They don't play favorites, and you'll see the Fords and the Chevys and the Pontiacs week after week running right at the front.
Right, and you'll notice we have AC-Delco on Fords also, because we do provide parts for Fords, other domestic automobiles, and some imports also. So that is our market.
Vintage Bob Seneca is what we're witnessing here as we pass the 100 lap mark. A little over 2/3 of this race are completed. Mike Eddy leads the race. We're showing Butch Miller unofficially in 12th position, 1 lap down. So he is definitely going to lose ground to Mike Eddy, and if they finish this way, he may in fact lose his points lead. Back down to pit road with Ralph for an update.
Rob, just to update you on the 3 cars that are leading right now with our tire strategy. Mike Eddy and Bob Seneca both took 4 tires. Scott Hansen only took 2. He needed to get track position back so that he could get up in there and race with these guys. Brian Refner's got a hood borrowed now from Alan Knott Racing. That, of course, comes from Joey's car, and as soon as they get a chance, he'll put this on.
There's Brian Refner's hoodless and aerodynamically challenged number 5 automobile. They're running alongside number 90 Kent Stauffer in the Flex-Tech Kinetic Racing engine for it. And back up front to the GM Goodrich Pontiac of Mike Eddy and the Johnsonville Sausage number 84 of pole sitter Bob Seneca, who makes the low side move on the inside. Can he make that move stick? Mike Eddy says maybe yes, maybe no. They're side by side for the lead. 106 laps into this race, and that means 44 laps remain in the GM Teamwork 300. We'd also like to take this opportunity quickly to thank Bill Lovejoy, the Vice President and General Manager of General Motors Service Parts Operations, for joining us up here in the booth. It's a nail-biter right now, Bill, so we're going to let you enjoy the rest of this one.
We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for visiting with us.
Thanks a lot, Bill. Well, we've gotten our update from Torch, the official statistician for the American Speed Association. It didn't take him too long to figure if the race ended right now, Mike Eddy, if he were to win this race, and Butch Miller to finish 13th, which is where he currently is, Eddy would take over the points lead for the first time in 1994 by 12 over Butch, and it would literally be that thoroughbred battle to the checkered flag.
Here's a race for 6th place as Brad Loney in the number 33, the Winnebago entry there, running ahead of Tony Raines in the number 25 car. Tony, of course, we have chronicled his season throughout the year as bad luck has continued, has bitten him, and perhaps today we shouldn't even say anything, because as soon as we do, you know how superstitious these guys are. They're going to claim that it was our fault just because we mentioned that then something happened to him. But Ken Schrader running ahead of Brad Loney and running ahead of Tony Raines right now, and that's the race for 6th.
And when you realize that neither Loney nor Raines have ever been on this racetrack before, and Kenny Schrader literally has thousands of laps here, just again, a credit to these youngsters' ability to adapt to a brand new type of race course.
Ken Schrader trying to run away from these guys, but they are obviously paying close attention. If he's the teacher, these pupils are going to get an A on the test here so far as they're running right behind Ken Schrader, the great veteran who he raced, and in less than a 12-hour span, he was in a race car in Richmond, Virginia, and then he was in another race car here in Michigan.
and doing quite well. Loney runs in 6th, Range challenging for that spot. He occupies 7th, all by himself on the racetrack. In front of this group is car number 56, Brett Bell. He's 4th. Now, he was racing with these guys just a few laps ago. He now has separated himself from them and chases the front-running threesome. Mike Eddy, Bob Seneker, and Scott Hansen.
Make that Bob Seneker, Mike Eddy, and Scott Hansen, as Seneker has made a successful pass for the lead over on the backstretch. We watched the race for 5th between Ken Schrader, and now we get a quick shot of Bob Seneker running way out in front of Mike Eddy. Here's how the job was done.
Bob Seneker, who all weekend has run the high side, goes to the bottom as Mike Eddy. You saw that Goodwrench Pontiac twitch as he exited turn number 4, got momentarily out of the throttle, and that was all Seneker need to put that Johnsonville Foods Lane Automotive machine out front. But did I see just a little puff of smoke as he dropped down in turn number 1? Maybe just a fender rubbing on a tire. It looks like it has absolutely not slowed him down. Now it is Scott Hansen pressuring Mike Eddy for 2nd position.
I think, and we may be able to get some confirmation from this, I overheard a lot of the guys, and even Brian Robbins at the drivers' meeting, talking about there is a little bit of a bump over there in turn 1. So just as the car starts to squat down under the G-forces going into the first turn, it also, the suspension has to deal with a little bit of a nudge. So we may see periodically a puff of smoke as they go into the first turn, because the suspension gets squatted down just a little extra on a bump there as they exit the home straightaway.
3 weekends in a row, Bob Seneker has earned pole positions. He's won here at Michigan International Speedway. He, early in the year, Brian, was outside the top 10 in the points, but this team has really gelled as a cohesive unit. And now he is, in fact, though it's a long shot, he is a legitimate title contender.
Bob Seneker running out ahead of Mike Eddy and Scott Hansen. Seneker made a pass and took advantage of the hesitation and whatever caused it by Mike Eddy to gain this advantage. In between them there is the number 48 car of Joe Knott with the checkerboard hood. Soon we will see Brian Reffner's automobile with a similar checkerboard hood, because you mentioned a moment ago that the crew of Joe Knott came running out there with a hood to loan to Brian Reffner.
Meanwhile, it continues to be Schrader, Loney, and car number 25, Tony Raines, running together. But the good battle now is this 2nd place tussle between Mike Eddy and car number 53, Scott Hansen. And Bob Seneker is just out for a nice Sunday afternoon run.
Bob Seneker running out in front may have an opportunity to think back 13 years ago, because this is what Michigan International Speedway looked like when the American Speed Association visited here. The cars were a lot different then than they are now, and Rob Albright, you would know more about that. But here is a familiar, somewhat familiar looking blue number 84 sitting in Victory Circle. It belonged to Bob Seneker in 1981.
There was a completely different philosophy to ASA back in 1981, Brian. At that point in time, in fact, all the way through 1991, it was considered to be the top ranks of the minor leagues. It was the series that a driver could run his car at a local short track and with minor modifications come and race ASA. A major league decision was made in 1992. These ASA cars are adaptable to really no other series, and that's why when you make this leap, you've got to be prepared to run with the big guys here at the American Speed Association. And Ralph Shaheen, you're with a guy who was very, very emotional about this return to MIS this morning at the drivers' meeting, ASA's president.
I don't think I've ever seen him so choked up as he was this morning. Rex Robbins, tell me about your feelings here today as we return to MIS.
Well, this is our first time back since 1986. And I'm going to tell you there's a lot of changes since 1986. We've got a great car, we've got great drivers, and I think we're going to put on a great show.
Well, I think that's speaking for itself out on the racetrack, and somebody's going to get invaded by these guys a little bit later on in November. As usually, Ray, you and your city back in Las Vegas, these guys are going to take over. We had the press conference. How excited is Las Vegas about the Las Vegas 300?
Well, Ralph, this is our first nationally televised race in Las Vegas, and we're very anxious to hold it in our city. Hopefully, if we get a great enough turnout, we can look forward to having this become an annual event with our fans to look forward to attending each year.
Rob, you got your poker chips ready?
Uh-oh, not me, man. I'll tell you, I get sick when I throw a quarter in there and nothing comes out the other end.
Well, I'm a little bit that same way, and I know the Las Vegas folks don't like to hear it. I was bitter when I lost $1.25 out there, but I'm going to have to see if we can dial it up a notch when we head for Las Vegas a little bit later on. Bob Seneker leading this one. It's break time at the GM Teamwork 300. A look at the spotters. And if we wave way out here in the front, well, you can't see us, but we're in that little box over in the back looking down on the GM Teamwork 300. We are also about 7 laps from another competition yellow as Bob Seneker leads from the pole in the blue number 84.
I'll give you just a quick rundown of the current top 10 as we near our final, perhaps, competition yellow of the afternoon. Bob Seneker, Mike Eddy is second, Scott Hansen rides third. Fourth is Brett Bell. Kenny Schrader is fifth in car number 52, followed by Brad Loney. The 25 of Tony Raines, again, problems plague him as he's fallen off the pace, but for the moment still runs seventh. Glenn Allen Jr. is eighth. Somehow, Brian Repner has managed to stay on the lead lap in ninth position. He needs a caution badly. And guess who's running right behind Repner? You don't even need to look at this. You can tell me. Who is it?
I bet it's inverse numerical order from ninth down.
Exactly. Dave Sensiva, the other rookie, and Tony Raines now looks like the afternoon will end. He came very slowly by the start-finish line last time, and now he's come to a near stop off turn number 4, trying to coast that Cleanburn machine onto pit road.
Well, the last time we saw a car going like this, it was the red 18 of Mike Miller. We're still trying to track down what's going on with that car, or what went on, because they folded the tents down there on the Funco land number 18. Here comes Tony Raines in the number 25 entry, the ETR E&L Brokerage Cleanburn Chevrolet. He's got a little more momentum, and he's heading back behind the garages. So we've got another story to track down way back there on the garage row. Let's go down to Ralph Shaheen, who on cue has come up with some insight on what happened to the red 18.
Well, it was the motor going bad. He just blew the motor and he was done.
Well, that's pretty short and sweet. And
Mike Miller is too, isn't he? If we'd asked Mike, he'd probably said the same thing.
Brian Dreverism at this point appropriately would be, that's not good.
No, not good.
Can we add that to the list? We need to start making a list of these things. Some of them are good, and some of those are not good.
We've got a top 10 list we'll be sharing with you a little bit later on in the broadcast. Ralph Shaheen, you got more?
Well, we're coming over to Tony Raines here in just a second, and he is stopped back here in the back cabin area, and we'll stick the microphone up under the car. Tony, what happened to you?
Yes, and the first one don't count.
I assume that means it was a motor.
Yep, as usual.
You can hear the frustration in Tony Raines' voice. It's been their problem all season.
Understandably, some real frustration, perhaps even sarcasm, the only way he knows how to approach it, because engine trouble, engine trouble, engine trouble has been Tony Raines' byline almost for the last half of this season.
Scott Hansen working on Mike Eddy in a charge for second position, and they've got nothing at this point for Bob Seneker.
Not even in tandem do they have anything for Bob Seneker. We know from watching super speedway racing that often when two race cars get hooked up together, they can go a little faster than either one can go by itself. Now, Scott Hansen perhaps feeling as though sitting behind Mike Eddy was not exactly getting the job done, has set off in lone pursuit of the leader as we look down, as we run down, we should say, the field at 120 laps into this race. That's a couple of laps ago, and we are now just a couple of laps from another competition yellow. We hope that you see your favorite race car driver as we run down the field.
Hansen is now second. Mike Eddy is third. And look how quickly, Brian, once Scott dispatched with Mike, he's able to put some distance between himself and car number 88.
He just ran out of patience, I guess. He was waiting for Mike Eddy to get the job done in his GM Goodwrench Pontiac. And instead, Scott Hansen has set sail, and quickly, we might add, going after the leader, number 84, Bob Seneker, who is way out in front. So let's see if alone Scott Hansen has anything for the Bluebird. The AC-Delco Challenge Series, named, of course, for AC Rochester and Delco Remy. Yesterday, we had a chance to talk to Skip Conklin from that organization. Skip, we talk about here on the ASA circuit, AC and Delco. These are names that we're familiar with, but what are they and what do you fellows actually do?
Well, the AC and Delco names are emblazoned on millions of components on millions of vehicles. AC is from AC Rochester, Delco is from the Delco Remy division of General Motors.
So those are two separate companies. You know, I was leafing through the business section of the newspaper not too long, and I read something about that. What was that all about?
Right. In July of this year, AC Rochester and Delco Remy merged as two divisions of General Motors and created a new division called AC Delco Systems. Now, the two divisions were merged to more align their marketing efforts, their technical expertise, and a systems approach.
The competition yellow has waved at 125 laps into this 150-lap race, so we will have 25 laps of racing, including some under yellow here, and that is what will end the GM Teamwork 300. It's not nearly over yet. In fact, the action just seems to be heating up. Hello, Miss Wins. We'll be right back. Tune in to TNN on Wednesday, November 2nd at 9 p.m. Eastern Time in prime time, 8 o'clock Central also, when ASA Racing makes its first visit to Las Vegas. We'll bring you live coverage of the ASA Championship race, the Las Vegas 300, from beautiful downtown Las Vegas, Nevada. And that is something you do not want to miss.
Well, there were some fantastic pit stops, but there was one that was incredibly long for Mike Eddy in car number 88. He was in for an interminable period of time. It looked uneventful as they changed right side tires, and then when they went to the left side, they had a problem. Now, that is an unusual looking race car. Chad Myers, what's the scoop?
They have put it on the Brian Refner car. That's Joe Knott's hood on Brian Refner's car. They have a lot of pop rivets, a lot of drill holes in that hood now when they give it back to Joe Knott. But they are very happy that they have that on there now, and a lot of duct tape to try to get the car more aerodynamic. The amazing thing, and Rob Albright, I know you said this in the break, he did not lose a lap without a hood. How did that not happen? What a fantastic run by the rookie.
It certainly is, but one thing he will not do is win the Fell Pro Best Appearing Car and Crew Award, at least not this afternoon. Now, we understand that Scott Hansen has come to a stop on the inside of the racetrack, the second place car. Now, look at this parade of cars, Brian, down pit road, and this could determine the outcome of this event.
This was earlier, and as we mentioned, all the leaders coming into pit. We see Mike Eddy, who is all the way closest to the camera here, clear down at the end, so he comes in. Take a look. Again, this was earlier. This was under caution, the competition yellow that came out at 125 laps.
Look how quickly, I think that's Bob Seneker on the left of your screen, was in and back out. Now, you know, he's not only been fastest on the track, but this crew has just been unreal on pit road today.
Ken Schrader and Joe Knott coming out. Of course, that checkerboard hood on the red car.
I believe, was car number 33, Brad Loney, if I'm not mistaken. I think, well, I'm not sure, because I thought that was Joe Knott at the top of pit road. And here's Scott Hansen, car number 53, in that AFCO Hansen Motorsports Ford Thunderbird. And a great run this afternoon comes to an unexplained and apparent rapid end.
What is going on? That was a hard left turn. You don't suppose he just got lost out there in turn one? Nope, there's Scott Hansen. And I was just joking. Scott Hansen, a dejected-looking race car driver who had come back out very quickly from the pits. Now he sits outside the race car with his helmet off, and that is not good when the race is still going on.
Well, as the field files by the start-finish line, we have a brand-new leader. And it's a guy that we haven't seen among the top 10 all day. And early in this race, we said, well, looks like Brian Refner is going to take over that rookie points lead. I'm not so sure as we look at the man setting the pace for the restart.
So just when I got ready to take out my fork and stick it in David Sensiba because I thought he was done as the rookie points leader, he's now not only back in contention and holding on to his rookie points lead, he is up front.
So take out your fork and stick it in yourself, man.
I'm done. I quit. I
You're
surrender.
well done.
But, you know, I should have known. I should have known about these two rookie guys. It is mystical. And let's go down to Ralph Shaheen.
Well, Dan Crawford is a crew chief for Bob Seneker, who only took a gas and go, but there's grease on the car. What's wrong?
Well, the right rear hub is leaking a little bit. Not bad enough to hurt anything. We're going to stay out and finish.
It could be trouble here for Bob Seneker in the closing stages. Mike Eddy also took 4 tires, so Mike Eddy is loaded up and ready to go.
I'm not sure it was a routine 4-tire change stop, however, as Mike should have been in and out in about 18 or 20 seconds. Instead, he was out in for about 40 seconds. Brian Refner has been back on pit road, and we're, I think, this time, no, we're another lap away from going back to green.
Brian Refner came in. Apparently, they were making some more fastenings to that hood that he took the car out there, and apparently there was a little flappage that they didn't like. The idea, of course, being to button up the front end of that race car that was just about to come off in a chunk after he lost the hood earlier. The right front side was flapping. They brought him in. They're trying to tighten up the aerodynamics and the bodywork on that car. They must have done it.
And like I said, Brian, we're going to go another lap before we go back green, right? We have gone back to green with Dave Sensiba the leader, but I'm sure not for long. Bob Seneker is right behind him. Butch Miller is 2 laps down, and Ralph is with a dejected Scott Hansen.
Well, I'm not with Scott. He's still stuck out there, but his problem is either a clutch or a rear end. They're not sure which one of the two, but he is definitely done.
Bob Seneker, as you mentioned, now quickly goes to the lead around David Sensiva. There is the number 81 entry up front there, Harold Fair, in the Build-A-Mo Triple S 2000 Pontiac off the pace. Seneker, the pole sitter, going hard up front again, gets around Sensiva for the lead, gets around even Harold Fair to be first car on the racetrack. But we see a red, white, and blue AC-Delco Chevrolet, the 52K of Ken Schrader now. Looks like he's running second.
And the Chevrolet of Brad Loney running in third position. Remember that $16,000 Chevy contingency bonus money, which would be added to the $25,000 winner share. A $40,000 plus payday would fall to one of these Chevy drivers if by some quirk of fate they're able to outrun or outlast Bob Seneca.
Over $300,000 at stake here today. And if we had to weigh where that prize would be heaviest, it would be if a Chevrolet driver would win because of the contingency money. It's been a little bit of a drought for the bow tie drivers out here, so that contingency money which rolls over is big indeed. David Sensiva, of course, driving a Chevrolet, and as you mentioned now, AC-Delco Chevrolet of Ken Schrader has gone to the front.
And a crowd of race cars squeezed past Dave Sensiva. Remember, he did not come on pit road. However, it was a gas-and-go only pit stop for that man right there, car number 52, Ken Schrader, who runs in second position now. Harold Fair provided a little interference. It looked like Brad Loney might try to tag onto the back bumper of Schrader, but Fair, who's a lap down, did not give him enough room. And I think maybe, you know, Harold better get out of the way maybe and let these guys settle it on the racetrack as he is a lap off the pace.
Here comes Brett Bell back underneath now. Bob Seneker, what a familiar sight it has been to see the pole sitter running out front in the number 84.
And Mike Eddy and Glenn Allen Jr. bumping their way down the main straightaway at 180 miles an hour. That is not a good idea, I think. Mike Eddy trying to prove us wrong with this lengthy pit stop that might have cost him a shot at a victory. He made a late stop last weekend in a non-televised race, and we see contact between a couple of cars. I think it was Loney and Brett Bell as they came off turn number 2 and headed down the backstretch.
It's hard to take that short track racing hard out of these guys, even when they're out there running on the super speedway. Brad Loney backing out to let Brett Bell go on. Now he gathers it back up again. We also have to think back now with Gary St. Amant talking about tires. We also heard from the folks at Goodyear, from Ralph Shaheen and everybody else that had an opinion about tires here now. Mike Eddy, the crafty veteran, went in, changed 4, and he's working his way back to the front because now, according to both him and Bob Seneker, it's fresh tires that are faster here at MIS, contrary to what had been conventional wisdom previously.
But what do Bob Seneker and Mike Eddy know about it anyway?
I don't know. How many victories do these guys have between them? How many championships? Bob Seneker, the winningest driver in the American Speed Association ever. 70-some-odd victories here, and I know Rob will be able to narrow that number down immediately. And if he can't, one of the know-it-all brothers will jump over here with the facts.
Well,
there
I do know it's 75 wins for Bob Seneker. I do have to take a quick peek to see for Mike Eddy, and it's 5 this season that we've talked about, and in race history, I know it's somewhere near 40.
In the 40s, yes.
Yet interestingly enough, Mike Eddy has 7 championships and just a single title for Bob Seneker. So race wins do not necessarily mean championships. And it is now Ken Schrader who had a great stop, but gas and go only, and that is costing him.
Mike Eddy in the black number 88 Goodrich automobile. There is Brett Bell in the Wonder Bar beverage dispenser car behind him. But out front it's Bob Seneker, who is the race leader in this GM Teamwork 300. We'll be right back, folks. Stay where you are. Racing Electronics, the official supplier of communications equipment to the American Speed Association, is giving you an opportunity to feel like you're a part of the team. Rob and I will be drawing the name of one lucky race fan during each of the remaining ASA races televised on the Nashville Network, and the winner will receive a Unident Bearcat scanner from Racing Electronics, along with a 1-year Racers Frequency membership. This week's winner is Carl Ellsburn from Cincinnati, Ohio. You can enter, and to do so, send your name and address on a postcard to Racing Electronics, Box GFS, 8701 Mallard Creek Road, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28262. And if all else fails, that's how you can reach us for just about anything that you'd like to pass along. There is Bob
changed, has it? Bob Seneker continues to lead this race. And speaking of winning something, hang in there for the next few minutes, folks. If you entered our contest to hang out with the TV production crew for a weekend, it will be a weekend of fun in Las Vegas. And
in just a few minutes, we're going to talk about our winner. What a creative entry, I'll tell you.
Finally, we have had an opportunity and had some fun, even with our executive producer, John Petrie, all season long, who just about cried when he was away in Las Vegas taking care of some business when we made this announcement that, yes, it's real, yes, it's going to happen, and yes, Bob Seneker has just been able to run off and hide at will out there today. Bob Seneker led early, sat on the pole, periodically gave up the lead to Mike Eddy and various others. We have had quite a few lead changes in this race, and the interval between first and second place right now is getting bigger, I would expect.
Great battle for third through about seventh positions. Right now it's Ken Schrader running in third spot. Mike Eddy is ahead of him by about 15 car lengths, but nowhere near catching Bob Seneker with a straightaway lead. It is Schrader in third. Fourth is I think a pass is going on for that position right now. Oh, well, I'm not sure. I can't even see him here at this juncture. But I will tell you this, race fans, Bob Seneker's lead is big, but the total margin of victory this season from 14 races, 11.95 seconds. That's an average of 9/10 of a second the winning margin per event.
Rob Albright and I are often arm wrestling over information here and have to fight each other to get these little scraps of paper that come across the room from Torch, Scorch, and Zorch, three of the Know-It-All brothers with us this week, and they have told us that the interval for the lead at lap 138 was 5.77 seconds. A lap later, it had gone up to 5.95, and with 10 laps to go, which happened just a moment ago, Bob Seneker's lead was up to over 6 seconds, so he is stretching it out over Mike Eddy and the rest of the field in spite of having changed 4 tires, which he thought was the good thing. Mike Eddy's losing ground on Bob Seneker now, and we're 9 laps from the finish of this one.
Yeah, there was Seneker. You can watch coming off turn number 4. Where is he? There's Mike Eddy by himself. Then there's that battle for third position. It's Brett Bell third in car number 56, followed by Ken Schrader in 52. The lapped car number 81, Harold Fair. Then in fifth position is car number 33, Brad Loney, and behind Brad is Glenn Allen Jr. in car number 15. Remaining on the lead lap but falling off the pace is the man who elected not to come on pit road during our most recent caution, Dave Sensiba.
Scott Hansen behind the wall, retiring with as yet at least we have no precise description of what happened to Scott Hansen's car when he looked like he was going to lead this race. He went back in. There is Ken Schrader's 52K, but there is the man, and I mean the man. We've used that expression in a lot of different sports in recent years, but today, without question, the man has been Bob Seneker in the number 84, the Johnsonville Sausage entry. There's a good look at the race car driver. He's probably starting to smile just about like that inside his car right now.
Bob has won almost 1 out of every 5 ASA career events in which he started. This season, a win, 2 poles, 3 top 5 finishes. That's at MIS in 75 career victories. By the way, it's 48 for Mike Eddy coming in this afternoon. 48 wins for Mike in his ASA career. And he's actually run more ASA races than has Bob.
So experience, which we asked a number of these drivers about here at Michigan International, is one thing. Experience specifically at this racetrack, but experience in general. And it appears as though the experience and perhaps treachery, well, we haven't seen any treachery out of these guys here today, but their experience has certainly come to the forefront. Mike Eddy chasing Bob Seneker, 2 great veteran drivers battling for the victory here. That's 6 laps from finish.
There's Mike Eddy. As I said, he has a few more starts, 347 career ASA starts. I remember when he was an 18-year-old fat-faced kid. That's why they called him the polar bear, because he was huge. 48 career wins. That's in the American Speed Association, that ranks second among all drivers. 1 win, 3 top 10 finishes at MIS. Next year, I think something's going to change, Brian. You've got running back behind these guys, Brett Bell, Brad Loney, and Glenn Allen Jr., some of the up-and-coming drivers that we've talked about all year long. They have to have gained a lot of confidence, and it does look like now that Bell and Schrader and company are beginning to reel in that second-place car number 88 as the big advantage of fresher tires seems to now be dwindling.
5 laps remaining, and the GM Teamwork 300, 150 laps of racing on the 2-mile High Bank Super Speedway here at Michigan International in Brooklyn, Michigan, just west of Detroit. Bob Seneker in the Johnsonville Sausage blue number 84, the Lane Automotive Ford Thunderbird, running away with it here. He was fast in practice. Nobody could touch him. Well, Mike Miller got close and sat outside row number 1, just 0.2 of a second, or 1.5 of a second slower than Bob Seneker in qualifying. Mike Miller's behind the wall. Bob Seneker still leading this race. And Mike Eddy and a host of others, as you said, gaining on him, trying to deal with first place. We're not sure if they can get up there. It's a great race for second. There's the leader.
There's the leader, Bob Seneca. It's been a great story watching Kenny Schrader and Brad Loney, who started 29th and 31st respectively. We've got a car on fire coming off turn number 2, and it is Brian Refner. So when things go up in smoke, for Refner today, they go up in a huge way, coming off turn number 2 as he's come to a stop, and he'll be bailing out of that car in a hurry. It's probably the same type of fire that Todd Forbes experienced early in the race, but without the hood, there's a lot more room for those flames and fumes to escape. Refner safely out of the race car.
And here comes the track crew, of course, over to put out the flames. Meanwhile, pretty much unscathed by all of that activity as Bob Seneca brings out a caution, and that's a caution, not competition yellow, but one caused by Brian Refner's fire on the racetrack, and that'll close things up a little bit and make the last 3 laps of this GM Teamwork 300 very fun and interesting indeed.
And they will, because ASA never finishes a race under caution, Brian. We'll stop the lap count. We've reached lap number 147 with 3 to go. That's where we'll stop it, and the final 3 will be run under green.
Oh, man, we haven't sat down since the green flag dropped, and we're not about to sit down right now because the big lead that Bob Seneca had built up is going to go away very quickly indeed. Brian Refner's misfortune brought out a caution flag now, and we will freeze the lap count. 3 laps remaining. Brian Refner's car in the middle of the backstretch being attended to by the fire crew. Bob Seneca's big lead will now be a car length when we come back. Under caution here at Michigan International Speedway, under sunny skies, just a beautiful day of racing and a large crowd enjoying competition here. There is the trophy that's at stake for this GM Teamwork 300, and we are under caution with 3 laps to go, and that 3 laps to go will not change. There's the reason why, is Brian Refner's car coming back in, getting a little shove from one of the tow vehicles out there, and a dejected-looking rookie driver behind the wheel as his day started out with such high hopes and has ended up in flames. The caution has come out, and Bob Seneca's 6-7 second lead is now down to a car length ahead of Mike Eddy, ahead of Brett Bell in the Wonder Bar machine, and ahead of Ken Schrader in the 52K. They've closed it all back up again here at 3 laps to go.
Also remaining on the lead lap, Brad Loney, car number 33, runs in 5th position. Glenn Allen Jr. is 6th in the 15 machine, the CarQuest car. And Dave Sensiva has now got to be feeling pretty good about his shot at the Rookie Championship as he's 7th. 8th position, car number 32, Ted Smokestad, 2 laps off the pace, as is Butch Miller in car number 52. And Butch will maintain his points lead should he finish in 9th, but that lead will drop to maybe 15 or 20 over Mike Eddy.
Occasionally, we have an American Speed Association race that's not televised, or maybe you're in a situation where you can't get to a television set and see our normal coverage. Well, not to worry. Complete green to checkered flag coverage of all ASA races in the AC-Delco Challenge Series are carried live on radio over the American Racing Network. Our final radio-only race, Sunday, October 2nd, from the Toledo Speedway in Toledo, Ohio. Check your local listings for the American Racing Network station in your area. Our colleagues on the radio do a super job alongside us when we're on the air and without us when we're not. And we mentioned our contest about hanging out with the television crew. Our contest winner, and we certainly hope you're out there, Tammy Hibble from Sunrise, Florida. We've got a little, it's sunrise, not sunshine, close but no cigar. She wrote in with the top 10 reasons to be part of the Brian, Ralph, and Rob show at an ASA broadcast. And of course, our occasional colleague, Chad Myers, who's with us once again here today. A typical entry came in from, and an honorable mention should go to Andrew First of Dagsboro, Delaware. Dear GFS crew, I'd like to hang out with you because I'm currently unemployed, so I have time to kill, and Group 5 Sports and the American Speed Association would be a great way to pass time. Well, we have to agree with you, but the winning entry came from Tammy Hibble, and she listed 10 reasons why she'd like to come. And
by the way, thanks, Andrew, and all the rest of you who entered our contest. Andrew First finishes 2nd today, but I guess it would be nice just to kill a little time with us, huh? But Tammy had some other reasons, and she was selected not at random, but because she was so creative. The top 10 reasons. Now, number 10, she said, I can run with the big dogs. Now, she's probably talking about Seneca and Eddie, but I'd like to think she meant Brian and Ralph and Rob and Chad.
I would too. We're still under caution now. Reason number 9, rainouts in the Midwest. I'd get to keep coming back.
Reason number 8, I'd be able to promote racing.
Reason number 7, I'd like to have fun.
Number 6, I'm not sure. We saw her picture. She's a nice-looking lady. She says, I'd like my husband to get involved in racing, just in case single Ralph had any ulterior motives, huh?
Reason number 5, I'd like to get the inside scoop on racers. Well, you can certainly do that because access to the racers at the American Speed Association is virtually unlimited. We'll get back to that perhaps because we are about to go green here, and nothing will take precedence over what we're about to see. Look at this, folks. With 3 laps to go in the race, Bob Seneca, Mike Eddy, Brett Bell, the young rookie driver, or rookie to be perhaps for next year, sitting in 3rd spot. Kenny Schrader in 4th spot. Everybody else lined up behind him as we get ready to go green. We do have a quick time to run down those last couple of reasons.
Now, I know better than this, Tammy. And reason number 4, I miss those hot, muggy Midwest summers. I hate getting up in South Florida in the summertime when it's 95 and 97% humidity. But okay, we'll buy that.
It'll be hot but dry in Las Vegas because that's where Tammy's going to join us. Reason number 3, I need a vacation. Well, don't we all? But this job is a vacation, Rob.
For me it is. Reason number 2, I'd pay my own way. You don't have to. Airfare to Las Vegas and your hotel room, okay, we'll let you pay your own incidentals, and you got to bring your own gambling money.
And the number 1 reason to hang out and be a part of the broadcast crew here on the American Speed Association, Tammy Hibble's number 1 reason, I actually like race dogs. That's race hot dogs, only with dirt and ketchup, and that is a race fan.
Tammy, you'll be getting a call soon, and the details will be coming your way. We look forward to meeting you. You may be pulling cable, you may be bringing water to the celebrities. You don't know what you're going to be doing, but you're going to be there in Las Vegas come November 2nd. Helping the director. We just
Gary,
got in our
he needs help.
Gary Clem is beyond help. We're going green. Let's finish this thing, Brian.
Bob Seneca running out front on the restart. He's got the big punch there and opens up a bit of a lead. We saw Ken Schrader have a great restart. We just saw Bob Seneca do a great job on the restart and went from 1 car length to about 12 or so ahead of Mike Eddy, running in 2nd spot right now. And it looks like Seneca's determined to show us that it was no fluke. He opened up such a large lead before that caution came out.
Of course, Bob has the option of electing to pick up the pace where he chooses off turn number 4. You don't very often outfox, outsmart, or outguess Mike Eddy. It also could be a function of the transmission that's been selected and the particular gearing for this race. Whatever it is, Bob Seneca has been the man since Friday afternoon, and he only now needs to negotiate 4 more miles around Michigan International Speedway to recapture some glory from the ASA days here in the mid-'80s.
And there's a very anxious crew of the Johnsonville Sausage Lane Automotive number 84. Those guys obviously did their homework before they got here. Bob Seneca was fast right out of the trailer, put his car on the pole, and now it's nail-biting time for the crew of the number 84 car, hoping that their driver can keep his foot in it and the car will hold on for another couple of laps here. We're 2 to go in the GM Teamwork 300 as the American Speed Association makes its return to Michigan International.
And now Mike Eddy will try to hold off the youngster Brett Bell, who stamped himself as an early contender for Rookie of the Year in 1995, running in that 3rd position. And they are maybe just a little bit with 1 lap to go, narrowing the gap, but I think Seneca is just teasing them, Brian.
Well, we still have to keep our fingers crossed, and everyone out there who has a favorite in this race will be doing that, because we have seen the hopes of a lot of drivers go up in smoke in a heartbeat. So Bob Seneca now with just a half a lap, a little bit more than a half lap to go to catch the checkered flag here at Michigan International. He's got to have his fingers crossed on the steering wheel of the blue number 84. Mike Eddy not exactly breathing down his neck, but a hiccup on that 84 car, and Eddy will be by.
When Bob Seneca last won here, he finished first ahead of Rusty Wallace, rookie Pat Schauer, Alan Kulwicki, and Doug Klein. He's going to do it over a fellow veteran, Mike Eddy. Checkered flag for Bob Seneca in the first GM Teamwork 300.
And the crew of Bob Seneca celebrates from Dorr, Michigan. The driver has brought the Bluebird home once again. He has piled another victory onto his extensive list of career victories in the American Speed Association, and 13 years apart has brought the checkered flag into his car. here at Michigan International. In 1981, in a very different American Speed Association car and under very different circumstances for this sanctioning body, Bob Seneker, the great veteran driver, won a race here, and now he has done it again in 1994. The Johnsonville Sausage Lane Automotive Ford Thunderbird comes home a winner today.
And with Steve Holtzhausen dropping out of this race early, you have to believe that Bob Seneker may vault to third position in the point standings. The last 3 races, a win on TNN from Milwaukee, a 4th place finish at Minnesota, and a win here at Michigan International Speedway. A great weekend.
And a great time had by a lot of fans here that we believe are now going to be converts to the American Speed Association's brand of racing on the super speedways. I would have to say that we have taken a step into that new frontier, racing on the super speedways here today. What a terrific competition. We certainly have enjoyed it. The points battle is going to be tightened up, and we are going to enjoy, already looking forward to the next race on the American Speed Association Tour, because that points battle is going to be tight right now. There is a look at the winner of the race, and maybe a smile from Bob Seneker.
Mike Eddy 2nd, Brett Bell 3rd, Kenny Schrader 4th, Brad Loney 5th, and Glenn Allen Jr. 6th.
For Rob Albright, Ralph Shaheen, and Chad Myers, I'm Brian Drebber. So long from Michigan International. We'll see you real soon.